All right, everybody. How you doing? It's News Debate. I am Lee. We are inching closer to Christmas. I have not yet decided if I'll do a show on Christmas Day and New Year's. I'm kind of thinking about that. If you have an idea of, hey, that sounds like a great idea, Lee, or no, that's a horrible idea, tweet me over on twitter.com/NEWZ Debate. It is News Debates, live over here on Stereo, live on Twitter Spaces, live on twitch.tv/NEWZ Debate, live on rumble.com/user/NEWZ Debate. You can send text messages and also leave voice messages during the show. Just call 323-250-0867. That's 323-250-0867. And here at the start of the show, want to welcome patreon.com/NEWZ Debate supporters Patrice and Frankie J. Also, concerning Frankie J, we're going to start the show here with Frankie's football picks. Frankie, each week, this is the third week now, has been doing some NFL pick'ems, just the winner, not over-unders, things like that. Who's going to win the game? Despite the fact that Frankie had a good week and I had a bad week, I tallied and I think we're actually tied and we're less than 500. So you can tell it's going very well. Let's hear from Frankie J for Frankie's football picks.
Hey everybody, it's Frankie J with Frankie J's NFL picks for Week 16. The week started on Thursday night with the Chargers at the Broncos. The Broncos led the game most of the time, and the Chargers ended up coming back to win by 13 points. But anyways, moving forward, there are Saturday games this week, and two of them are awesome, the only two. We have Houston visiting Kansas City, and we have Pittsburgh visiting Baltimore. Both great games. I like the Texans to go in and upset the Chiefs because it's a question if Patrick Mahomes is going to play, and if he plays at all, is he going to be 100%? So I definitely take an upset here at home for the Chiefs with the Texans. They are a decent team. They're starting to play some football. And then we go over to Baltimore where Pittsburgh's going in. This one, I don't know. It depends on if Russell Wilson has his number one receiver, George Pickens. If not, I think Baltimore wins this one comfortably. Those are my picks for the week.
Yeah, those are interesting games, Frankie. Let's jump in here now really quick at the top of the show. With Patrick Mahomes, I think it's a high ankle sprain or something like that. Once again, the Chiefs this year are underwhelmingly good. They're deceptively bad despite the fact that they have a great record. And when he's either not playing or, as you pointed out, not playing at his peak, then whoever is in Kansas City has an edge. Then again, the Texans have not been super great this year. They've not been as good as they've been in the last couple of years. They're just okay this year. And it's a home game. So I would not be surprised if the Texans lost. But if push comes to shove, I would take the Texans here. So I would agree with you. And once again, we're just doing winners. So when you get into points and everything else, that's a different ball game. But when it comes to the Steelers versus the Ravens, I'm going to take the Ravens. The Ravens have playoff kryptonite, sort of like the Bills. So in the playoffs, it's a different decision process. But during the regular year, I'm going to take the Ravens on this one squarely. Also, the Steelers did not impress with their last game when they lost to the Eagles. The Eagles are a bit of a hot mess, but they have a fantastic record, and they're making a lot of people's pick now for the Super Bowl. Just a short time ago, the pick for the Super Bowl for many people, including Jim Nantz, was, it's going to be the Bills and it's going to be the Lions. I think the Bills have not suffered in that time, but the Lions, even though they're fantastic and arguably they're a better team than the Bills when they're healthy, they just have so many injuries. It's death by 1,000 cuts. So yeah, I would take the Ravens and I would take the Texans. Why don't you unmute yourself here, Frankie, and tell me why I'm wrong about the Ravens.
I don't think you're wrong. I think the Ravens are going to win the game.
Oh,
Russell
I'm sorry. I
Wilson
thought you
hasn't
picked the
had his number one
Steelers.
receiver.
Clearly, I'm drunk.
No, I didn't. No, it's okay. I'm drunk on NyQuil. I think the Ravens win this game. Russell Wilson, I don't think is going to have George Pickens, his number one receiver, and they are coming off that horrible loss to the Eagles. So as much as I'm a Russell Wilson fan and a Steelers fan, I just think Baltimore at home, playing for seeding now in the playoffs, is they're going to be a little more ready to go. But I'm watching the Kansas City game right now, and it's 7-3 Kansas City, but Patrick Mahomes is gimping a little bit, and the Texans
Oh,
have
but Mahomes is
held their
playing.
ground.
I wasn't sure if he was going to
He
play
is.
today.
I wasn't sure either, but it's Mahomes and he's dramatic. But his ankles are taped up pretty heavily, and the one and only time that he ran for a touchdown. He got up. He just doesn't look like his ankle's good. So it's cold. I don't know. It's
I
gonna be
think
a
that's
long
a
game.
really bad move. I mean, I'm not Andy Reid, so go ahead and do whatever you
Yeah,
want, Coach Reid. But
yeah.
when you're trying to win 3 Super Bowls and be the first team to do that in a row, and your star quarterback, who not only leads your team but is in many people's minds, on par to set up to become the best quarterback in the history of the NFL, to play him today when you already have a fantastic record. If you lose to the Texans and Mahomes doesn't play, no one is going to say anything about that. That seems like a bad move.
It Pat Mahomes is in charge pretty much, and he told Andy Reid, "I'm playing," and you
Well,
don't
then
say no to
Patrick
Patrick
Mahomes
Mahomes.
is making a bad move, and Andy Reid should know
Pretty
better.
much. Well, they also are playing for the first seed in a first week bye in the playoffs, so that would give Pat Mahomes a week
Does
to
not
heal up.
matter if he's injured.
It doesn't. You're right. I agree with you. I think
I
Pat
mean,
Mahomes is
it's
an
not
injured.
about holding your quarterback, back when you already have a good enough record, and whatever the situation is about getting home field advantage. That's one thing, and you could do that as the Bills. They could think about this next game versus the Patriots, right? They're playing the Patriots. Josh Allen could sit that one out, and I don't know that that's a horrible decision. Patrick Mahomes could sit as well, just in general. But when his ankle's already screwed up, oh man.
Yeah, it's to me, and this is just my humble opinion based on the history of Patrick Mahomes. He likes to make a paper cut very dramatic. He's done it in the
It's
past.
not a
He's an
paper cut. He's
actor.
injured.
No, I know. I'm giving you an analogy. He will make the mildest of injuries seem so bad when it happens, but then all of a sudden the next week he bounces back like nothing's wrong. That's
I
what
don't
he
know, man.
does.
The Super Bowl that they lost, his foot was bleeding.
Yeah, I know. It was like Kurt Schilling with the Boston
Oh,
Red
that's
Sox a
right.
long
That's a
time ago.
really good reference, when he was pitching and there was
Yeah,
blood. Yeah.
yeah. So for me, it's not. I know Pat Mahomes is a warrior, a champion, 3-time Super Bowl, but he is overly dramatic. And is he injured? Yeah, he is. You can tell he's hobbling around a little bit. But if he wants to play, Andy Reid's not going to stop him. It's been proven. And they're playing for right now they're playing the Texans. The Texans won their division. As bad as they've been all year, they won their division, so they're in the playoffs.
Well,
So
that's
now
because
they're
divisions are
playing.
stupid.
Yes, they are. The divisions are dumb. I remember a year where I think it was I can't remember. I think it was the Buccaneers actually that made the playoffs, and they had like
It
an
was
under
Tom Brady's
500
last
record.
year. He was
Yeah,
a losing record and made the playoffs, and they lost the first
right.
game to, who did they lose to? I can't remember.
Oh, they lost to
But yeah,
I
that
think it
definitely
was the
happened.
Eagles, wasn't it?
Can't remember.
Or wasn't the who cares? But yeah, so the divisions are stupid, but they do in a way make sense because they're 4-team divisions, and it gives it doesn't matter. You as long as you have the best record in that division, you're in the playoffs. So it keeps it real. It keeps it honest. But right now, these teams that are playing right now, Kansas City and Houston, they're simply playing for what seed they're going to have in the playoffs. So they're looking ahead at where are we going to sit? Who will we potentially have to play? So it's really strategic at this point. So I can see why Pat Mahomes would be playing. I think he's stupid. Josh Allen to go to the Bills, they're not going to sit him until the season's over and we go into the playoffs.
But why
Because
not?
if
They're
you
playing the
sit Josh,
Patriots.
right, but the thing is we're also trying to fight for that first seed in every win. If we win the next 3 games, the last 3 games against the Patriots, the Jets, and then the Patriots again,
Oh, okay.
and
Wait, time out.
if
I
Kansas
might I
City,
might pull back this decision. If you beat the Patriots, the Jets, and the Patriots, yeah, that's not a hard thing to do.
could be though,
Ooh,
they're playing for jobs.
yeah.
They're padding stats right now, and at the end of the season, they want to be on the teams or they want to be traded, so they're trying to get stats right now. But the Bills are going to play Josh Allen as long as Josh Allen's playing, because to take him out now and put in backup Mitch Trubisky, I really believe that would hurt the team going into the playoffs
Well,
because of
if it
Josh Allen.
wasn't the Patriots, the Jets, and the Patriots, if they were playing the Broncos or Tampa
Yeah,
Bay, which does not have an amazing record, but it has had some fun games the last couple of days. And
yep,
Tampa Bay, as you just pointed out, they're in a weak division, so they always make the playoffs as long as they're not terrible. If they were playing
sure,
them or even the Falcons, I think is a much more intimidating team on paper, at least, than the Jets or the Patriots. Despite the fact that you said the players are playing for stats so they can get traded, that'll be in the case. Like, I don't know. Because the NBA has done that for a long time. What's it called? Load management, where even just in a
yeah,
normal
yep,
season, they just won't play the stars half the time or 25% of the time. I
yep,
know the NFL is a different thing, and maybe that's complete load management from the NBA to the NFL is not ever going to happen. But man, especially when your star quarterback is injured, I get that if he plays and everything's fine, it makes their trip to the playoffs even easier. And that's important for a team like the Chiefs because, as you and I have mentioned and agree 100%, underwhelmingly impressive. They're a good team, but they just really have not been great. So they
nope,
need that oomph through the playoffs. I totally agree. But what's better, having to fight through the playoffs a little bit, or I don't know, a realistic chance, not out of the blue chance that your quarterback could be out for several games, if not the rest of the season? The Bills are different.
yeah.
I take that back. Thank you for giving me that context. Patriots, Jets, Patriots. Okay. There's still a chance of injury,
Well,
especially with a running
also,
quarterback like the Bills. But oh,
yeah. Well, you know what, Lee? You also got to look at, and a lot of people don't think this far. Who are the backups of these two teams? You got Carson Wentz, who backs up Patrick Mahomes, and he pretty much stinks. He's on his way out of the league. So if you do decide to sit a Patrick
he
Mahomes,
he is
you
on the
gotta
he is out of the league, but he has so much experience.
he does, he's a great backup. That's all he is now. But you would have to have an entirely different game plan for a Carson Wentz versus a Pat Mahomes. Just like in Buffalo, if you decide to sit Josh Allen, not only do you lose that synchronicity with him and his guys and his offensive line and team, but you have to come up with a completely different game plan because Mitch Trubisky is
Against the
not Josh Allen.
Jets and against the Patriots. Oh
But we're
no.
playing for
What are you
positioning.
going to do? Oh no.
Well, here's the deal. If we win out, if the Bills win the next 3 games and Kansas City loses one or two or one even, we get that first seed and a week off before
Let
the
me
playoffs
let me ask you this
because,
question. Do you think that
yeah,
with Josh Allen sitting but still available, so dressed on the sideline if need be, do you think the Bills realistically could lose to the Patriots, the Jets, or the Patriots again?
yes, I do.
Do you think they lose to the Jets?
I can't say they wouldn't. Um, I just these last 3 games, everyone thinks that they're just you know playing teams that suck, and they are, but they're still playing professional teams that are playing for their. Each of these players are playing for jobs and trying to pad stats, so they're going to come out and they're going to want to spoil the Bills' playoffs. Even though the Bills are already in the playoffs, they're going to want to beat the Bills so that they'll be lower in the
So
playoffs. So these
so
are dangerous games,
usually, like, your best
trap games.
player on your team is only worth a handful of points. I can't recall, but, if Josh Allen plays or doesn't play, or Patrick Mahomes plays or doesn't play, Las Vegas doesn't all of a sudden say, "Well, they're gonna lose by 14 points." So whatever it is, your best players are worth 7 points or less, and I think closer to less than 7. So you think that the Bills could lose to the Patriots by something like 5 or less points, and the Jets 5 or less points, and then the Patriots again 5 or less points? You guys have just scored like some of the highest amount of offensive totals in the history of the NFL, right?
Yeah, hey, sorry, I'm dog sitting.
I think your dog agrees with me. Yes, Lee.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
that's not my
Lee.
dog. My dog doesn't bark. No, I just these are what everybody in the NFL fanship would call trap games. These are you're playing teams that have nothing to lose now. They're out, they're done. Their seasons are technically over. They just have to play the games that remain on their schedule. So these are trap games. These are the games that everyone expects the Bills to put up 58 points, and it'll be a game where it's under to altogether under 40 points. So I don't see them being blowouts, but I also don't agree with sitting your star players at you got to keep the thing going. You can't just we're going to sit Josh Allen this week and put in our backup because that just you're killing the chemistry. I'm a firm believer if Josh is healthy and Josh can play out the season and then go into the playoffs not losing a beat. But you take these guys out even for a week or two, they
Fair enough.
yeah, they practice with the
You're not
that's just
wrong.
my point.
It sets the muscle memory for the team. Like, I completely agree with you. By the way, since you sent me that voice message, I think before it was clear, whatever the case with Patrick Mahomes, even though they're up 7-3 right now, I will allow you to switch your vote because I'm switching my vote. If he's playing, I take the Chiefs. If he's not playing, I am not a slam dunk for the Texans, but I'm like, okay, I'll take the Texans. Would you like to switch your vote now that he is playing in the game?
Nope, I don't want to switch my vote at all because the Houston Texans right now, their defense is playing amazing and they are moving the ball. They're going
Okay.
to
All
hopefully
right.
score.
So this is
Yes,
good
I like
because
the
now we
Texans.
have some discrepancy between your picks and my picks. So we're tied right now, and we'll have a winner, hopefully, after this week, which we can, use bragging rights for. So, okay, I'm taking the Chiefs. You're taking the Texans. We're both taking the Ravens. I'd love to see the Steelers. I like the Steelers story. I'd love to see them do well. But after the loss to Philadelphia, and even if they had beat Philadelphia, I think I would probably take the Ravens. The Ravens, a bit like the Bills this year. I would not describe the Bills like this in the last several years, but the Ravens the last several years steamroll through the normal season, the regular season, and then they get to the playoffs and they fall apart. So I believe in the Ravens for the regular season, and I'm taking the Chiefs. You're taking the Texans and the Ravens. Awesome. All right, it's News Debate. I'm Lee. Stay with me, Frankie. Patrice, how are you doing? You're joining us over on Twitter Spaces as well, also live on Stereo, Twitch, and Rumble. We'll get to some hot takes, but how you doing on this weekend, Patrice?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Patrice and
the game on.
Oh, you have the game on as well. You're watching the Chiefs Texans.
I do. I am.
Are you taking a winner for
I
that?
love me. Oh yeah. I got me a little wager. Little wager. It
Are you
will
in
be.
Utah right now? You have a home in Texas, but you're in Utah.
I'm in Utah. Having a great time. I'll be here through like the first week of January.
And so are you taking the Texans in allegiance to your home in Texas, or do you also have a home in Kansas City? Which team do you take in this current game?
I am taking Kansas City. I
Yeah.
don't have allegiance to Texas.
The Texans are a cool team. They're a bit like the Lions,
Yes.
not quite because they don't have that history, but the Texans were so bad for so long, and they had what's his name, great defensive player who went to the Cardinals and retired, Watts, yeah, and his brother now plays for the Steelers and is sort of the same sort of position. Um, it was so interesting watching him play for the Texans. They even like gave him the ball a few times, and he was like a running back. Like he was a good player, and they were trying to figure it out. So it's nice that the Texans finally do have what looks like franchise quarterback, and they're at the point now that you expect them to be good each year, and you think they're probably not going to have these swings of, oh shit, they're horrible again. So I like the Texans, and I have to admit, the more the Chiefs win, the more I dislike them. But well, Patrice, one thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if she's going to join us today, but you and I have been in communication behind the scenes trying to figure out what the hell happened to Shannon. She has had some health concerns the past year. In fact, we're getting not too far away, just a handful of days, and we'll be at the anniversary of her heart attack. That kind of started the ball rolling on all these other things. And we had not heard from her for a while. But I can report that she did contact me. She was in the hospital again, and she was asking when my next show was. So I don't know if she'll make it today. I'm hoping to do a show tomorrow, so maybe she could join us possibly today or tomorrow. But Shannon is apparently doing well. I don't recall if she let me know if she was out of the hospital again or not. It didn't sound like she was still in the hospital. It sounded like she went to the hospital and went home. But yeah, Patrice and I are worried about her. If you don't have people on the show for a while, that's fine. It's not a big deal. But Shannon was such a constant co-host on the show and missed so many shows in between the last time she from her within, I think, the last 24 hours, something like that. Just happening over and over again because she out for a walk literally during the show. I think it was our Thanksgiving show. The day before Thanksgiving, she was telling us about stuff, and then she dropped, and that happens, and we never heard from her. And then eventually she's like, oh, I slipped and I had to go to the happened. It'll be interesting. Always fun to hear. But she is with us. She's still kicking, and looks like, gosh, how many would that be? It's probably at least 5 this year that she's been sent to the hospital. She's a real battler. And if she does join us today, there are a few stories that are in my mind right now. And if anybody wants to steal one of these, their hot takes, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we can hear one of yours. I want to say hi to Reggie, who just joined us over on Twitter. How you doing, Reggie? You may have heard a car has yet again slammed into the crowd at a Christmas market in Germany. Several killed, a couple hundred injured. I don't understand how that country still allows that to happen. I'm sure there's Christmas markets in every Christmas markets all over the city. But at this point, you have to have those anti-car barriers at every one, or just say we're not having a Christmas market. I mean, something like 200 injured, apparently. I don't know how many times this has to happen before they do something like that. The Syrian rebel leader who took over the country, I guess, is no longer a terrorist, according to the United States. There's an update on that French teacher that was beheaded a while ago. Biden is officially racist. He has deported more people than Trump. And the story I wanted to get to if Shannon pops up is that they celebrated the winter solstice at Stonehenge. She's a Wiccan person, so we're going to talk about that. We recently talked about the unfortunate school shooting that happened. It was very kind of like a unicorn one. It happened, I believe, for the second time in recent memory at a Christian school, and it was a girl. Well, we were talking about guns versus knives. A 7-year-old girl has been killed and several people injured in a stabbing at a Croatian elementary school. So, happens with knives too. I think more people survive with knives, and I'll take that trade. Give us the knife attacks versus the gun attacks, but we could talk about that. The Biden White House has basically given up its protections on transgender athletes. There's a reason for that. We could talk about that. The governor of New York has announced a temporary ban related to flights because of all these drone sightings that I guess now are happening in New York and not just New Jersey. There's updates on the Wisconsin school shooter, that girl that I was talking about. Apparently, she was in contact with a California man who was supposed to be planning a separate attack. The Supreme Court will hear about TikTok trying to not get banned, and I think those are all the updates that I have. Patrice, talking with you. Do you have a hot take you'd like to start with? You have posted a few things over on my Discord server. You can join my Discord server for free by going to bit.ly/NEWZ debate. That's bit.ly/news debate. We have conversations during, before, and after the show over on Discord. We also do it on Twitter. So some people prefer tweets, some people prefer Discord. You've posted several stories. What do you want to start with, Patrice?
Yeah, I was just looking. I didn't post it, but I just pulled it up. I guess a lot of the I don't know if it's just the yeah, I guess mass exodus of the volleyball players at San Jose State with the trans athlete are leaving. I it's kind of sounds like it's a protest kind of deal.
Yeah, so I vaguely remember
So
there was a team that had a trans player, and they were having probably like their March Madness, but for volleyball, whatever it was. They were having some kind of tournament, and a team decided to not participate in a game and therefore knock themselves out of the rest of the tournament because their next opponent was a team that had a trans player. So, born a man, but identified as a woman, has that unfair genetic advantage. And they were just like, we're not going to play. And I believe they were not the only team that did that, but I can't recall. So let me look this up. You said it's San Jose State. Or did
yeah,
you just
I think
post
I
that?
just put it on if it comes
Yep.
up.
I see it from the New York
It looks
Post.
like there's 7 players that are transferring out as a couple had threats.
All right, let me pull this up and we can read from it together. Wow, this is like the this is like the best New York Post story ever. The New York Post does have real news. It's not my favorite source, but I use it all the time. It's totally fine. But this New York Post article is written by someone at Fox News, so you know it's the highest quality New York Post / Fox News story that we could ever get to. And Reggie
It
has
was
requested
that
to
of the
speak, so
Daily
we're going to throw
Mail.
you up. Reggie, stay with us. We'll get to you in a moment, but I'll just throw you up so I don't forget. San Jose State University has acknowledged a recent mass exodus of volleyball players who entered the transfer portal. So you usually hear about the transfer portal when it comes to football and basketball, but I guess everybody can enter it now. After the controversy-riddled season involving a trans athlete on the team. Okay, so this is interesting. Before, it must have been people playing San Jose State, and they said, we're not going to just participate in this at all. But now these are players, as you pointed out, from the team with a trans player, and they said, we're done with this. The university provided a statement to Fox News Digital in which it expressed respect for the recent wave of players who have opted to transfer. Quote, student athletes have the ability to make decisions about their college athletic careers, and we have the utmost respect for that. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that 7 of the team's players entered the portal. The 7 players transferring will be leaving the team after a season that included 8 forfeited matches. So, yeah, 8 times other teams said, we are not playing you. So technically that means 8 victories, but I assume in volleyball, you want to play because volleyball is a sport that people do not pay attention to. It's not a sport that makes money. It probably loses money. Like most collegiate sports are paid for by men's football. And people seem to forget that when they talk about, oh, we should have equal opportunity for women, except that the opportunity is paid for by men. But that aside, I assume if you play collegiate volleyball, your number one goal is to play. And so to be on a team where you don't get to play those games and there's national spotlight on you, not for being good, but because of that, I can understand why they'd want to leave. So they had 8 forfeited matches. They had regular police protection, national scrutiny, and internal turmoil between players and coaches. One of the players even received threats of physical harm amid the controversy. I want to know more about that because I could post that I love puppies on Twitter and I would have death threats. So I want to see what that means. The head coach spoke about how the 2024 season was one of the most difficult of his life after his team's loss in the conference final. Says maintaining our focus on the court and ensuring the overall safety and well-being of my players amid the external noise have been his priorities. The transgender player in question is Blair Fleming and is out of eligibility after completing a 4th collegiate season in 2024. Well, that's interesting. If the player won't even be able to play anymore, maybe you could stay, but at this point I feel like people are just pissed and want to leave. So the team season ended in the Mountain West Conference Championship game after it advanced to the title game by virtue of a forfeit from Boise State in the semifinal round. Boise State previously forfeited 2 regular season games against San Jose State, so they wouldn't play them in the season, and then during the semifinal round, they said, we're not playing you because of the controversy involving Fleming. And the loss effectively ended the trans player Fleming's college career. In September, co-captain Brooke Slusser, that's a name, joined a lawsuit against the NCAA, alleging the program withheld knowledge about Fleming's birth gender from her. It's not a birth gender, Jesus Christ. It's birth sex or just sex. If something is flexible and you can change it, it's not a birth gender. It's the sex. Jesus Christ. I would have expected better from Fox News. Come on, Fox. So the co-captain sued, alleging the program withheld knowledge about Fleming's birth gender from her and other players on the team. Slusser alleges she was made to share changing and sleeping spaces with Fleming without knowing that Fleming was a biological male. Absolutely, these are problems. These are absolute problems. Slusser, along with several other players in the Mountain West, filed a separate lawsuit against the conference in San Jose State in November over Fleming's presence. That lawsuit included testimony from former San Jose volleyball players alleging they were passed over for scholarships in favor of the transgender Fleming. The lawsuit also alleges that San Jose State players spoke up about an alleged scheme by the trans player Fleming to have Slusser spiked in the face with the volleyball. Jeez, spiked in the face sounds like worse than it is. Slusser was not spiked in the face in that game. An investigation by the Mountain West Conference concluded without finding sufficient evidence of the alleged plot, so they said it didn't exist. Assistant coach for the team was suspended by the program in early November after she filed a Title 11. Sorry, is this 9? Yes, Title 9, Roman numerals 1X. Title 9 complaint against the university for showing favoritism towards Fleming over other players, especially Slusser. And the assistant coach's complaint also led allegations that Fleming was trying to have Slusser spiked in the face. Slusser says she and other players lost trust in the coaches. So it sounds like this did not go very well. Who would have thought that young girls would want to spend their time with someone who was a young boy, who identified as a young girl? Not to mention the allegations that this trans player was trying to assault the other player. So apparently, San Jose State tried to make it up to the players by giving them meals and hotel stays, but wasn't enough to keep the 7 players from entering the transfer portal, which once again, this happened after the trans player is no longer able to play anymore because you age out of collegiate eligibility unless you become like a graduate student or something. So really giving the royal middle finger to San Jose State from its players because they're leaving, even though in essence the next season would have only biological female players. Okay, Patricia, this is your story. What do you think about this? This is disappointing to hear. Whatever you think about transgenderism, I mean, people have the right to know when they're changing and sleeping with someone else who they are as college students.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. And I'm glad these players gave San Jose State the middle finger. Meals and what did you meals and free meal? They were giving them free meals and
So at the end, it says that the team sort of gave the players and their families some hotel stays and like a Thanksgiving meal when they were in Vegas for the the competition for the playoffs. But that was not enough. It says at the bottom, it was not enough to keep the 7 players from entering the transfer portal. Hey, sorry about finding out in the middle of the night that your roommate had a wiener, but here, how about a Thanksgiving dinner, everybody? Some turkey, a little bit of stuffing.
I just don't know who makes decisions like that. It's mind-boggling, actually. It's mind-boggling. I mean, it's funny, but I mean, who really comes out with those kinds of decisions? I would love to meet them. Anyway, I'm glad the
I
players
gotta say,
transferred out.
I kind of feel bad for the administrators involved with this because what are you gonna do? You either make the right decision and you tell everybody on the team what's going on, and then they have the right to decide if they're okay with it. And you say, you know what, I am a person who has a job and I have been instructed that this player is eligible. And so what am I supposed to do? You know, you can kind of explain your situation. But the school didn't do that. They hid it. And then apparently, as it was getting worse and worse and worse, it sounds like they forced retribution like on players who had a problem with what was going on. So I can understand that from especially San Jose State, sounds like a public university. Like from that perspective, you sort of have to worry about being canceled by the left, which is usually the ally of public universities. So maybe they're like, okay, well, this trans player is beautiful and she's a hero, and we should all look up to her. But at the same time, they threw the other players under the bus, and now they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They tried to celebrate this transgender player. Apparently, according to multiple allegations, even gave her scholarship money compared to other students. And then when the other students started voicing the concern, maybe rather than hearing that and making some hard decisions, they apparently tried to push them out as well. So in theory, I can understand it from the side of holy shit, we're a public university and we don't want to get canceled. But I think they didn't even handle that very well.
So was she always within the somewhat, I don't, not regulated probably isn't the right word, but were her hormone levels ever
Doesn't say
checked?
anything.
Was that
Doesn't say
ever?
anything
Oh,
about
okay.
that. I don't know what the rules are for college
Okay.
basketball. In international competitions, I believe they've just sort of banned men from identifying as women and competing. That's happened time and time again in the last couple of years. I don't know what it is with volleyball. I don't know what it is in NCAA competitions. We could look that up, but that's not part of this article.
Okay. Um, 'Cause from what I've read,
Also,
even
Patrice,
if
I'm not sure if it's just on my end, but I'm hearing like a click as you talk. Frankie, are you hearing that?
Little bit. Not
Yeah,
atrocious though.
yours is not clicking. So, Patrice, are you able to hop in and hop back out? I'm sorry, hop out and hop back in. That might fix it.
okay.
Sorry, Elon sucks, everybody. Elon is now the Grinch. We should all give him the middle finger. In the meantime, let's hear from Frankie, and then we'll have Patrice join us again when she comes back. Yes, Frankie, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I this is a great story that Patrice brought up, and quite frankly, and I'll go on record saying it. I think it's disgusting. I don't think any of this should be, first of all, happening. Secondly, it should not be hidden from fellow teammates for them to find out in ways they find out. I think it's disgusting. I think these colleges, the administration, they got to be reevaluated for their positions for even thinking it was a good idea by hiding it, and can't getting canceled or not, you do the right thing. And it's atrocious. You don't see this happening in the NFL. You don't see it happening in the NHL. You don't
Well,
see it
you don't
happening
see it
in Major League
happening in
Baseball.
the NFL because in the NFL, if you were a man, no matter who you identified with, you would still be a man, so it wouldn't affect anything.
Well,
And the only
what if
time
there's
that
a
a one
female
second,
that's
the only
transitioning
time
to a man?
one second, the only time that a woman who's transitioning as a man or just a woman in general would be able to play in the NFL would be as like a kicker. That's been floated. There will be no linemen who are genetically women. There will be no quarterbacks who are genetically women. They will be kickers. So it would be a different situation. It's not collegiate. So it's also not a college sport. But I think the NFL is not a great thing to point to here. You could talk about basketball in college. You could talk about even football in college because at least it's a collegiate sport. But to go to the NFL, I don't think makes too much sense.
Fair enough. I think it's disturbing all the way around, and that's been my position on it since this whole thing started. I think men's sports is men's sports, female sports is female sports. If you want to have a transgender division, do that.
Well, they couldn't
But
do that
don't.
really because they wouldn't have enough players. My suggestion is
Well,
if you
I'm just
have
saying.
male genetics, then play for the men's team, no matter how you identify.
Correct.
The issue with
Correct.
volleyball is that I think there is men's volleyball somewhere in college, somewhere. But if you think about volleyball as a competitive sport in college, I think like 98% of that is women. So I would say if men want to play volleyball, then just play volleyball. And if enough men play volleyball, there will be no women on the volleyball team because once again, men are physically superior when it comes to sports. And then they'll have to create men's volleyball, probably with slightly different rules, and women's volleyball, probably with slightly different rules. So I'm not against a man playing for the volleyball team at San Jose State, but this was a man who identifies as a woman. They lied about that. They didn't tell anyone anything, and it created this situation. But Frankie, don't you think if this person had just been like from the very beginning, or if the school had let them know beforehand, this person is genetically a man, and even if they identified as a man, they showed up and they had a beard, like the teammates could have accepted it, they could have not, but at least they would have known what was happening.
Well, I think they should have known, and they could have made a decision at that point, and there could have been, different arrangements made for sleeping arrangements or showering arrangements, whatever kind of arrangements that
Absolutely.
should have. I don't think that was handled correctly. I don't blame the team for walking away. I think they all should walk away, and shame on San Jose. Shame on them for handling it the way they did. Because I'll tell you right now, if one of those girls was my daughter and they had to go through that, I would be pretty upset with the college. I would be very upset, and it would be something that I would fight to not happen again. I think it's disgusting. I think it's atrocious that they hid the fact that this uh, man was identifying as a woman, and not letting these girls know they didn't have a choice. And to me, not giving these girls a choice, that's a problem. That's a problem on its own. That's
Yeah,
a separate
I think
story.
that's the problem, that everybody, whatever your thoughts on transgenderism and trans athletes and all that stuff, whatever your thoughts are, you should be against a school lying to its players, withholding information from its players. Because once again, I think 99, I feel like somewhere I've read about a college that has men's volleyball. 99% of volleyball that is competitive, and the teams travel and they go to the playoffs like they did apparently in Vegas in November. That's women playing women, to the point that I guess we probably even call it women's volleyball, even though it's just volleyball. And if a man wants to play, just like if a woman wants to play on the college football team at San Jose State, football is not for men. It's just only men play because it's a physical sport and women might be killed. But if a woman once again wants to be a field goal kicker, which I think could happen at some point in the NFL, will they be good? Who knows? But I think at some point within my lifetime, we'll have a woman kick a field goal in the NFL, even if it's just one time. It'll happen.
Well, Christy Brinkley did in a movie called Necessary Roughness in the 90s.
There it is. But it goes back to what I was saying, Frankie. So it's about the choice. So if a man wants to play on a volleyball team because there's no men's volleyball team and he wants to play competitive volleyball, okay, that's something we can discuss. If a trans woman who is a man genetically wants to play, that's something we can discuss. But you don't just like have me show up with a beard standing next to 18, 19, 20-year-old girls and be like, "Hi, Sally." I mean, like you would let them know I was coming. And then in my situation, they could see. But with someone who appears as, even though if you look, I think that there's some telltale signs, identifies as a woman and no one tells them, that is a really, really bad situation that college created, and they have no one to blame but themselves. And I hope some of these lawsuits are successful. Stay with us, Frankie. We have Ron who has joined us now.
Frankie J, that was
patreon.com/NEW Supporter Ron. Yeah, Ron.
Thank you. I was going to say, Frankie J, sorry to disappoint you, but you were wrong. It was Kathy Ireland in that movie.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
On the gauntlet.
Anyways,
I think she was a great actress in that. I love that.
Which team did she play for in the NFL?
She was just like a cheerleader, I think.
Oh, I thought
no,
you said
she was a soccer player.
Oh, soccer.
She did.
Okay.
It was a movie. Yeah, it was Texas State University. And their football program was dismissed because of boosters, and they brought in all these crappy players, and they needed a kicker. And the one coach saw this girl, Kathy Ireland, kicking a soccer ball a half a mile and asked her to be a field goal kicker.
Oh, no, it was a movie.
Yeah, it was a movie.
It is a movie.
Oh, yeah, Unnecessary Roughness with Scott.
But it wasn't.
It
wasn't like a Hollywood reenactment of actual events. This was something that just was made as a fictional
fictitious.
Hollywood. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at that movie, this is just another fact. There are a dozen or more Hall of Fame football players in that movie, along with a Hall of Fame boxer. The cast of that movie. Look at the cast of that movie. It's actually quite awesome.
I got to look this movie up. What's it called again?
Unnecessary Roughness. Or Necessary Roughness.
Necessary Roughness.
The play on one of those.
Kathy Ireland. I bet there's a scene in the movie when, like she runs out on the court because it's Kathy Ireland. She's like a former supermodel or something, right? She like runs out on the field, and they're bringing in the kicker, and then they say hike, and like the defensive team doesn't go after her, and the offensive team doesn't go after her. Just everyone like stares at her, and they're like, she's pretty. Because it's the 90s, you could be openly sexist in a movie like that. It's called Necessary Roughness. Necessary
Yeah.
Roughness. Let's bring this up on IMDb. From 1991, it has Scott Bakula in it.
Quantum Leap guy. Yep.
That's fantastic. All right, so it looks real 90s. There's an autoplay trailer that's starting right here. 6.2 out of 10. Okay. So I'm going to share this over on twitch.tv/NEWZ debate and rumble.com/user/NEWZ debate. Due to NCAA sanctions, the Texas State University Fighting Armadillos must form a football team from their actual student body with no scholarships to help to play their football schedule. Wow. Necessary roughness. Scott Bakula, Jason Bateman, Rob Schneider, Sinbad, Larry Miller.
I didn't realize Jason Bateman was in it.
It doesn't even mention what's her name in the top listed people. It doesn't even mention Kathy Ireland.
Well, it should.
You could tell she
There's
was playing
lots
a
of
really
Hall of Fame
important
football
role.
players too.
Oh man. Well, maybe we should have a stream party and try to stream this and watch it. That's fantastic. All right. Well, like I
Lee, I
said,
think
they already predicted this
Patrice
in
had
the
her hand up, I
90s.
believe.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Patrice had her hand up.
Oh
I
yeah,
believe.
Patrice had to leave because her mic was coming in and out, and now she's
Gotcha.
back. Yes, Patrice, you want to throw in here? Have you seen Necessary Roughness? It takes place in Texas.
I don't think so. I don't think I have. Am I still clicking? Am I clicking?
You are not. It's gone.
Okay. No, I just wanted to tell y'all, it's just that kind of morning, or is it afternoon now? No, it's 12:30 here now. Okay, or almost. So you want to hear a little known fact about a soccer goal I made on an all boys team?
Absolutely. We must.
Was Kathy Ireland there?
No, no. So I was in oh my gosh. Okay, I'll try not to laugh. So I was the babysitter of the pastor of Kailua Baptist Church. And so him and his wife invited me to the church, and they had a soccer team, and it was all male soccer team. So it was time for the soccer game. So I was invited to the church. I went to the soccer game, but I wanted to play. I just didn't want to stand there and watch. So they said, okay, but you might get hurt. It gets pretty rough. And because the captain of the team, he was pretty good. He had played soccer for many years, and he was really good. And he says, it's going to get rough. I said, okay, I'll just kind of
How
stand
old
there.
were you
So
in comparison to these players?
I was, I think, 13, and they were teenage boys, and I think he was probably like late 20s. Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
I
he
was
was the
kind of
coach,
of
and they were teenage boys, and they were like, "All right, we got our Kathy Ireland coming in here," and you
That's right.
scored a goal.
I did. Now, don't ask me what the position's called because I don't know, but whatever is like forward to our goal, and I was like diagonal. And I was like I wasn't even paying attention. I was just like, standing there in a daze. And all I know is the ball hit me really hard in the chest, and I mean hard. That sucker hurt. And right into the goal it went.
So
I
when you
made the
say
goal.
you scored a goal, the ball bounced off you and went in the goal is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it hit me in the chest,
How brave.
and I wasn't close to the goal. I was kinda, like, over by the sideline, and it went diagonally into the
That's
goal.
one small step for man,
Yes,
one giant leap for womankind.
I was happy about that. And they bought me dinner afterwards. After all the soccer games, they go to A&W Root Beer. They bought me anything I wanted to eat, they said.
Man, that's the best part of the story. That's great. I was gonna say
Mhm.
when you
Yeah.
started telling me I couldn't remember what position I played. What's the one that's diagonally forward? I was like, did they just have like a gentleman's agreement that they went around and they're like, yeah, we're gonna let the girl score. Like that's what I was thinking was that they just did that. But then when you said someone to hit you with the ball and it bounced into the goal, I thought, okay, well that's how they did it, even without cheating. Was that you didn't know what you were doing? Somehow the ball hit you and then it rolled in. Goal, goal.
Mhm. Yes, it was one of the happiest times ever. Yep. So anyway, I played on a male team and I
You played on a
scored.
boys team.
Um,
You played on a
and
boys
I
team.
wasn't transgender.
And
Yes.
you were not
I
transgender.
wasn't.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So I did very well. Very, very well. Thank you.
And done. Yeah. So I'm gonna play this. I think I got this to work. I'm gonna play this this IMDb movie preview of Necessary Roughness. Let me bring it up. It's like a 2-minute trailer from imdb.com. All right, let's see how this 1991 PG-13 comedy about a Texas college football team that has to rebuild after NCAA sanctions, and it includes Kathy Ireland as the field goal kicker, who's not even credited in the top 6-7 people in the movie. Let's see here. Necessary Roughness. I'm live over on rumble.com/user/NEWZ debate and also twitch.tv/NEWZ debate if you want to watch along. It's Necessary Roughness.
This year, the Texas State Armadillos are a little short on talent.
Show me the arms, son. Throw the ball, genius.
How about that? He stinks at two sports.
But Coach Riggs thinks he knows where to find it.
I never saw anybody fire that football the way you did. Maybe you should stay here with all your high school trophies and wonder just how great you might have been.
Now Paul Blake is back.
So he was just talking to Scott Bakula on a farm, and he was like, out in a cornfield or something, throwing a football and was really good at it. And then he goes over and talks to him. He's like, you could stay here on the farm or you can come here and play football for me. He's smoking a cigarette while the coach is talking to him because it's 1991. All right, let's go back.
To finish the season he started 16 years ago.
I hope he gets younger as he gets closer.
Whoa, a 40-year-old freshman?
Yeah, maybe he knew Elvis. We're taught to respect our elders. Well, I'm not that old.
Trying to win with raw talent won't be easy.
Again.
Because this is as raw as it gets.
Once more. Come on now. That's better.
We'll be the laughing stock of college football.
Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle.
What do you think we are now?
It has to be your team.
Hey, come on, you don't want to mess with us. We're nobody.
I want someone to be their leader, not to leave them behind.
This Armadillo team is on a roll after last week's non-loss.
Nobody thinks
Oh, okay. So Jason Bateman is another player. Scott Bakula is the 30-year-old quarterback who goes back to college. And it just showed Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider is the play-by-play guy in the booth. So we just saw Rob
It's a
Schneider.
team of wannabes, led by a has-been who can make it through the season.
You guys got a hell of a lot of energy left considering we lost by 40 points.
But the Armadillos are taking it one game at a time.
That's what happened to wrestling, man. Women.
That was Sinbad just right there. He's another player. And Kathy Ireland just kicked a field goal in practice. So Patrice is out there on the field now.
Then take over the sport, man.
What we need to do is get crazy. We need to get wild. We need to.
Hey, little doggy, you about to get fixed.
Oh my God. So they just had the Texas State mascot going up next to like another team's mascot. It was like a bird. And because it's Texas, the Texas State mascot pulled out a fake gun and shot the other mascot. And then it came down. It just like fell over. And you might not have heard it, but there was a shower scene with Kathy Ireland. So clearly they were playing on the, well, we get a shower together now. You kick field goals. Oh man, it's News Debate. I am Lee. 1991's Necessary Roughness. This is the problem is that, growing up, you see someone like, we'll choose like Rob Schneider or Scott Bakula. You see them and they're like stars, or like Kathy Ireland, and you think, wow, they've had nothing but success. And then you don't realize like how many movies was Scott Bakula in that were like 1991's Necessary Roughness that probably lost money, and maybe we could watch it now and enjoy it, but like clearly was not a success. And like how many crappy movies was Rob Schneider a part of? I wish that when I was growing up, someone had sat me down and said, Lee, most of success is just getting people to forget about all your failures and getting them to remember about the few times, like Quantum Leap,
Right.
or Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo, when you finally hit the gold.
The first one was fun. I like the first one. It came out at the time when I was a kid.
Stop caring about all your other ones. Yeah, but Ron, please continue.
The Deuce Bigelow came out when I was in high school, and I worked at a theater, so I watched it a few times, and it was just one that my friends and I would quote. And he's a character. He was a character, especially on Saturday Night Live. I was watching an older episode yesterday. There's a new channel called TBD, and it shows that throughout the day, old episodes of Saturday Night Live. And there was one where it's him and Kevin Nealon. This was in '91. He and Kevin Nealon are doormen in New York, and they're just watching people go by and kind of doing and I could watch it for 2-3 hours. It was so funny. And one of the best skits of that show that I watched. But I love watching him in those, puppies. He had a few characters, but he's just funny. In real life, there's a home video where his daughter took him. They were watching TV, and he starts imitating like a hillbilly or something. It's just those people that are just naturally funny. Just to be around them is.
Are you talking about his daughter who's blonde and fat and is a singer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He body shamed her, I think, supposedly. And
what?
In the past. I'm sorry.
What did he do?
kind of body shamed her when she was younger, tried to get her into like fat camps, like trying to.
That clearly did not work. She's a big gal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when she was little, like it was like, he kind of, I guess, was embarrassed. Supposedly, I don't know if that's true or not. We can't say for sure. But she made a post about it on Instagram or something because she kind of has she's conflicted with her.
She posted on Instagram that I hate my father Rob Schneider because he fat shamed me when I was growing up.
No. First of all, they see differences in their political leaning, so she's more liberal.
Yeah, Rob Schneider is kind of conservative now.
Conservative, yes. And but it was, and she led into that. But that was something I didn't see on Instagram. I saw it somewhere else, like on a show, like one of those like ET Entertainment Tonight, where it was briefly talked about. Because I don't ever go on Instagram really. or Facebook anymore. But yes, that's
Ron,
Rob
do you
Snyder
have
is
any
just
like reverb or something on your voice? It sounds a little
oh,
crunchy and robotic.
crunchy. I'm just practicing my cyborg AI voice. That's all. I'm just pretending
Are
to
you
be.
are you just
I
are you just
every
on
other
the
time
phone? I'm not sure what it
I'm just
is.
right. I do human really well, but yeah, it's just the way I'm talking. That's all.
Oh, okay. Well, no, it's something else. I don't know what it's still intelligible. It's fine. It's just I was noticing it sounded a bit strange.
Sure.
Okay, so that was a great hot take from Patrice. San Jose State looks like they're probably going to lose some lawsuits. Do we have any other more comments on this? Otherwise, we can move on to something
I
else.
love I think that it was awesome that they gave her bought her anything she wanted. I think that's important. That they did that because then she
I'm
knew that
confused. Who bought who anything that they wanted?
they went to A&W root beer after
Oh, for
the
Patrice.
goal. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure they
yeah.
felt horrible for kicking a ball straight at her chest.
You
And
know, I think maybe they should have
It
brought
hurt.
you to
It
the
hurt like hell.
hospital, but instead they brought you to
what'd you say?
A&W. So
Yeah. What'd you say, Patrice?
Listen, it hurt like hell, and there was some power behind. I mean, that ball didn't just meander in. It went in with power. Hmm I
Absolutely.
I was I had a nice chest on me, and it went in. I
I'm
mean,
sure.
they were shocked. Everybody's mouth just dropped, and then we all jumped up and down and cheered and laughed. Yeah, and then I ate A&W root beer.
There
yeah,
you
and
go with a
then,
healthy appetite.
unfortunately, you had to be rushed to the hospital the next day. But yeah, for the first day, it was pretty good situation. Yeah.
I was
Wow.
red.
I was
Yeah,
red.
I was. I swear I was. It hurt.
To my dying day, I'm gonna wonder if that was just by chance that it hit you, or if someone was like, "Let's show that girl who's boss," or if they thought, know, no one on this team has breasts. Maybe if we bounce it off her boobs, like it'll go. I'm trying to think, like, was it on purpose? Was it was it by accident? Because if it hits you that hard, man, but it worked out.
I think that I was the only one, standing there, and I was at the right angle. And he was far away, you know. It hit me diagonal and it went into the goal diagonal, or
Wow.
whatever position that was. Yeah,
But did they do that thing
it was.
afterwards where they like pick you up and they're like, Patrice,
e-
Patrice, Patrice?
Everybody, yes, everybody picks me up. I'm one of those kind of women, girl, I guess, at the time that everyone picks me up because I'm
I don't know how
little.
to respond to that. Not sure where to go with that
I don't know
comment.
why people like to pick up. Uh, I don't know. People are always picking me up. Kids are
Ron, when
picking
you
me
were
up.
growing up in high school and you saw like a small teenage girl next to you, was your first thought, I'm gonna pick her up? I can't say I ever did.
No, I would not do that because by then it was just well, you know that it's inappropriate. But when I got a little bit older and started drinking, I would hug a lot of women and feel kind of bad that. But I didn't do anything too creepy. But it was still like I was just too. It was my early 20s, and I learned because
Patrice,
the next day
did you
I'd be
live
like,
through
I
that
need to
transition when
not
you were
stop doing
like
that.
a young teenager that they were picking you up? By the time you got to college, a lot of guys were just hugging you. Did you experience that as well?
I got a lot of hugs, but I was picked up quite a bit.
Okay, hug
I was a
and pick up.
cheerleader. I was a cheerleader. I was a song leader.
A
I
Ooh.
was a
song leader?
gymnast,
What's a
and
song leader?
you kind of to the songs. Now you don't see them very much, but in school you did.
You mean
We do
like
the
you'd have an
routine.
assembly where you would sing, "We are the fighting tigers," and then you'd like stand up and lead the song?
No, out on the football field,
Hmm.
Like pep
Yes.
you
bands? Like
dance
the
around.
marching band?
I wasn't in the marching band. It was called song leaders. You had your cheerleaders and then your
Mhm.
song leaders. And so we did like dance routines to music. We had pom poms.
So instead of being
Or
like, "Go team,
clips.
go," like the cheerleaders, you'd go out and someone would hit play on like a cassette tape next to a microphone, and they would play some music, and you would dance to it.
Yes. Shake the
Wow.
Yeah.
And perhaps a
Mhm.
baton was twirling. You know, that's gone out of style. You never see kids with batons anymore, do you? I think it's a lost
No.
art or whatever.
Sometimes in the Rose Parade, you'll still see it. I could I could twirl a baton. I wasn't in any kind of group, but oh yeah, I
Just
love
in their
me
spare
a
time,
good
some kids read, others, I don't know,
Right.
have some arts and crafts hobbies. Patrice just sitting there spinning a baton. Yeah.
Well, it seemed like every
Yeah,
girl when I
yeah,
was
and hula hoop.
Hula hoop. Yeah.
go ahead,
Oh,
How about
that's
the hula
definitely a
hoop?
thing of the past,
Oh,
right?
I
Yeah,
could
that's not
do
popular anymore.
oh, I love me. I could double the hula hoop. I could have 2 going, only 2 though. Some people could get more than that. I could get 2 hula hoops going. I was an
Well, the way
athlete.
you've
Did I ever
described
tell
yourself
you
about
all
how
that?
you were so tiny and men like to pick you up, I feel like you could only fit 2 hula hoops on you. I feel like that was a physical limitation.
Yeah. Yes. I'm pretty tiny. So, yeah,
Wow.
I was quite the athlete. I don't think you all knew that. I was quite the athlete. I trail run now. Do y'all trail run?
I don't know. I've also never
I
scored a game by
Oh,
getting hit in the breast with a soccer ball. So, I mean, you're clearly beating me in many ways, Patrice.
I I'm trying to get back
I
into
could
I, go ahead.
go ahead, Ron.
I'm trying to get back into the jogging. Like I'll go, a little bit of distance of jogging, and I'll stop. I can't do the whole thing, or unless it's downhill. When it's downhill, I can be like a 6-year-old again, and I'm flying. But if it's uphill or anything flat, I'm walking and then jogging, walking and jogging. And hopefully, I'll reach that stage again where I can just jog it the whole time, and it's nice.
Now,
I
Patrice, when
can
you
take you
trail
all
jog, are
up
you
Valley.
jogging the whole way, or are you meeting some men who pick you up and carry you half the way and then put you down?
No, I am, I I'm doing a little yeah, jogging. Sometimes it's faster than that, but I have my dog with me,
Mm.
one of my
Mm.
dogs, and, she is a black mouth cur rescue,
I'm sorry, what did you just
and
say?
she is a black mouth cur,
A black
C-U-R.
mouth
No,
cur.
cur, yes. So you
I,
can
I'm
look that
I'm gonna
up,
look
and
this
I'll
up. I've never heard of this. A
yeah,
black mouth cur dog.
cur.
Oh,
She's
mouth
a
cur,
herding
C-U-R. Okay.
C-U-R. Um, she's a herding and hunting dog. Her name is Ruby. I've put her on Twitter quite a few times.
Now I'm confused. I just looked
And
this up and the dog is actually not black. Is that correct?
no, just around their mouth.
Yeah, it's like a tan dog.
Yes. And
It looks
they're
like it has a
very
beard. Yeah, it has
athletic.
like a little bit of a like 5 o'clock
Mm.
shadow on its mouth.
She's cute. Yes, she can jump 7-foot fences with a clearance. So anyway, I take her with me, and she's in Texas, and I take her with me. So no, nobody touches me. No, they don't come close. Yep,
But you
she's
said she's
great.
a rescue, so someone gave up a beautiful dog like this? A purebred black
Oh,
mouth cur?
listen, you just wouldn't believe. Um, a friend, an acquaintance of mine on one of the neighborhood apps found her on one of these country roads that aren't too far from us, sitting next to a dumpster. She was probably about mm, maybe 4 or 6 months old. And anyway, so this elderly couple took her. And of course, as she was growing, it got too much for the wife. And basically, they did nothing with her, which was absolutely terrible because of the kind of dog that she is. She required training. And so, anyway, I was on an airplane um, from San Diego to Texas, and I heard about all this, and I said, when I land in Austin, I'll swing by and pick up that dog, and I did. And then I put her in 2 week. She actually required 3 weeks, but it's a canine training program. It's all over the country. There's a really good branch of it I'm sorry, in San Antonio. So I and boarding, they stay there. So she stayed for 3 weeks, and then you go down there and you go through the whole training and everything. You're there all day. You see what they did with the dog. You do all this stuff with your own dog, and then you go home. And I've had her ever since. She's a beautiful dog.
A black
So lovely.
mouth cur that is not black.
Lean and mean.
Never heard of this.
Lean and
Thought it would be
mean.
a black dog. Just looks like it kind of has a big beard around its neck. I'm sorry, it's big beard around its mouth.
Yeah. So
We're
she
getting some
goes trail. I
really
don't
quickly. We're getting some messages over on stereo. We're going to get to that topic next, and then I'll play those messages. At least the first one we got was about my Joe Biden deportation hot take that we haven't gotten to yet. So, Patrice, continue.
Oh, that's about it. We just I have to take her running, because she has so much energy. And then I'll go to we have some hidden uh they're not dog I don't go to dog parks, but we have some hidden kind of parks where people walk and run. And I'll go there before sunrise and let her off leash when no one's around. And she's a track star. I mean, you can't even see her. She's gone. And then I call her and she comes back and all of a sudden she just appears out of the trees. She is one of the best dogs I've ever had. One of the best dogs I've ever had. And
You
loves
like
to do
got like it's
laundry.
like you grabbed like a kid from like an orphanage in like Alabama or something, and then sent her to like
Yes.
Harvard, and then you're like, this is one of the best human beings I've ever met. But yeah, you did send it to a boarding schools like obedience training, so I feel like that has a lot to do with it. It seems to pay attention and come when you ask, and
Hmm. Oh yes. It's well worth the money, and it's not, relatively speaking, in the value. I'll say it that way. For what you get for 2 weeks of them being boarded, fed properly, cared for, and highly trained. These people are certified. I know the people in Riverside, California. So they said, "Oh yeah, go to Austin. The guy over there that runs it is great." Um, and they were. So for what you get, if you have a highly intelligent, athletic performance dog that you can adopt these dogs. You don't have to pay big money for these dogs, or maybe they're rescued by a trash dumpster on the side of the road. That happens all the time in Dallas. It
that's a
was
small. Yeah, $2,000. So rather than paying a bunch of money to get a purebred dog, maybe go find a purebred dog, as you found a nice breed of a dog. Somehow get a dog for free, and then pay that money that you would have paid for the dog,
yes,
and send it to
yes,
obedience school. Yeah.
yes. And she needed to stay another week
Oh wow, you
because,
had a
she
troublemaker.
well, like I said, this dog can jump 7-foot fences with the clearance. I should have. I just didn't have time to do it because I'm busy, always busy working. But those athletic competitions petitions. Well, they have ones that are like, yeah, I guess maybe they're part of that. Where, yeah, they do all the athletic. I mean, like real athletic. Oh yeah. She winner, hands down. And she's a sweet. Oh my gosh. There's no aggression unless somebody would be trying to hurt me. Then
Well,
she
the
isn't gonna
next
like
time
me, and she's gonna
apostate
make
Nate is
sure.
trying to buy an animal from North Dakota and have it sent on an airplane, I'll tell him to get a blackmouth cur that's not actually black, just looks like it has a beard, and it's a tan dog, and it's really, really good. It's very protective of its owner, and it can jump 7-foot fences. All right. It's News about Emily. We got Patrice. We got Ron. We got some people over on Stereo. Keep leaving us those voice messages. You can leave us a voice message about something else. But over on Stereo, I have something related to Joe Biden, who's now officially racist because Joe Biden has deported more people than Donald Trump. So the first answer is we should deport illegal immigrants. And the second one is I do not support deportations. So that hot take is coming up, but I'll keep that on the back burner. Ron, you are with us. Do you have a hot take you'd like to share?
Let me think. 1 second. What was it? How about? Let me think. Let me get back to you.
That's a rain check, Lee. That's what we call a rain check. All right. So in the meantime, I'll bring this up. This is one of my prepared hot takes. We'll take this from the BBC. I love reading about American-specific news from foreign entities. It's just thrilling for some reason. All right, from the BBC.com, which is their American website, not bbc.co.uk, their normal website. U.S. immigration authorities last year deported the largest number of undocumented immigrants in nearly a decade, surpassing the record of Donald Trump's first term in office. So Democrats are constantly calling Republicans, and also specifically Donald Trump, racist for not wanting an open border, for wanting to actually enforce some or all of our border laws. And then they do it even better than the Republicans did. Wow. What balls, Joe Biden. More than 271,000 immigrants were deported from the U.S. over the last fiscal year, according to information released by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The ICE report comes just 2 weeks before President-elect Trump, who plans to make mass deportation a cornerstone of his incoming administration, takes office. Yeah, that's coming up here. He's going to, apparently, if you can believe what he's preparing, he's going to mobilize the military to deport millions of people who are in the U.S. illegally. President Joe Biden, back in 2021, had pledged to pause deportations. Once again, lying Joe Biden, but his administration ended up expanding to deportations following a surge in border crossings. In the newly released report, ICE says the steep climb in deportations during the last fiscal year was partly the result of a streamlined process. More deportation flights went to further away destinations, including Africa and Asia, which did not accept U.S. deportations for years. Wow, they expanded. Majority of the deportations in fiscal 2024 involved migrants apprehended by border officials compared to those ICE arrested in the U.S. interior. So catching more people at the border. Does that make sense to do? Well, I guess it does. And since the Democrats are doing it, it must not be racist anymore. So now we can catch people at the border without being called racists. Roughly 82% of the 271,000 immigrants deported last year were arrested by border agents. Wow. It's amazing. As soon as the Democrats do it, it's fair game. President-elect Trump has vowed to launch the largest deportation operation in history when he returns to office on January 20th. They say 20 January because it's the BBC. These promises, however, are likely to face enormous logistical and financial challenges. Leading up to his decisive victory over Biden in November, Trump spent much of the time on the campaign trail attacking the White House's border policies. He should have been like, "Hey, look at this! Biden's a Republican." Trump transition spokesperson has said that the Biden's deportations, even though more than Trump, are insignificant compared to the high levels of illegal immigration that took place during Biden's presidency. A number of migrant encounters along the US Mexico border reached a record high in December 2023, but have dropped significantly, particularly in the last few months, and are now at their lowest levels since July 2020, according to the US Customs and Border Protection. Also, something that President Biden has done, which means it's not racist anymore to do it. In June, President Biden issued an executive order that sharply limited asylum, which, along with Mexico's help, led to a decrease in illegal border crossings. Wow. Make deportation great again, President Biden. Great job. All right, it's News Debate. I'm Lee. Ron or Patrice, do you guys have thoughts on this? There's one message over on here we can get to, but what are your thoughts first?
I just saw something that says at least one workout per week will aid in the.
No. We'll get to another one. Do you have anything specifically about deportations in the border?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me think. I just know that he is planning to deport a lot, and I have to say that my opinion about the immigration crisis or the immigration issue is really not fair to have a strong opinion, because I don't live in a border state. So therefore, I am
Wow. Look at
completely.
that.
It's I can't say that what life is like and what their problems are, what the arguments are, when I am not affected by it directly. So easier
Yeah, you're
to
still
have a strong opinion
affected. I
about.
mean, there are a lot
But
of
yeah,
immigrants in Atlanta, a lot of immigrants in
oh
Georgia,
yeah,
but
and I see
you're
them.
not
Sure,
seeing them cross the border like you would if you lived in Texas or Arizona or New Mexico or California.
right. I just don't see the effect of how they could be um, hurting my livelihood or anything. But who knows? I mean, I stay out of that issue. Of course, I don't have. I'm not a bigot, and I welcome those that want to. I think it's a
But that's
great.
not that's not what we're talking about here. We've been
Oh,
talking about illegal immigration the
deportations,
entire time.
deportations, as in, yeah, the
We're
ones
not
that.
talking about legal immigration. That hasn't even come up in this discussion
No,
yet.
no,
But
no.
we,
I
we
mean,
could.
yeah, of illegal, yes. So deportations, yeah, I've heard he's going to make a lot of those, and we'll see if he keeps that pledge. That
But what do you think, Ron? I mean, if someone is in the United States illegally, and we're not talking about people who commit other crimes, that is a whole
right,
other discussion of illegal immigrants who commit crimes.
sure.
But the original crime of not following our border laws, which is a crime and can sometimes be multiple crimes, especially the longer that you stay, are you opposed to having consequences like leave the country for those people?
But it's going to say, like I said, I'd rather not have. I'm not going to make an argument here, and because I just don't have the. Doesn't. I don't know. I really. I think it's hard to say. I can't. I really don't have a strong opinion about that right now.
All right, well, stay with us, Ron, because I know Patrice does. On a recent show, Patrice says we should just close the border. So, Patrice, why don't you give me a little bit of your hot take on this?
Close those borders. Um, well, what I have found interesting about um, is the family stories. I've seen um, families interviewed in San Diego, and like they're all there. All the adults are there, standing around the kitchen or sitting around the table, and they have interviewed them. Families in Texas that are coming up on this dilemma where some of the family members um, uh, are legal immigrants. There's a few, usually it's the men that are not, and they've all made family decisions. And I have yet to see one of these families that aren't going to go back to Mexico because they have a choice. Either some of them will be able to stay here and the rest will be going back probably, or, the chance of being deported back to Mexico, or they all go, and these are large families, or they all go back and make a new family life in Mexico. And from I've seen 3 interviews are all good. These families were going to go back to Mexico because they want to stay in their family nucleus. And there's little kids involved and auntie and uncle and so I mean I was it was I was glad to see that it was a large family decision and they're all making plans. They're not just, going to say, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll leave tomorrow. They're already making
Well,
their
it sounds
plans
like these are the
of,
ones that were willing to be interviewed, so that might be a self-fulfilling
yes,
prophecy.
yes. But I'm just saying, it was nice to see as a large family uh, coming. This is all going to happen in general, um, and to make those kinds of family decisions was nice to see. But the thing about it is, um, I probably won't say this right, but they have a choice, right? I mean, some people aren't going to have a choice,
Well, the only
and
the only
it,
choice that they
it
would have
and
would be, do we stay? And some people are deported if that's what happens under Trump, and I think he will have mass deportations. Whatever happens, I think he will do much more than what a normal Republican president would do, and he might do a lot more. It's not much of a choice. The only choice is, do we go with them?
yes, and they want to stay together as a family. And from what I've seen and other besides this, other I just read a story the other day. Um a lot of the uh oh gosh, am I even going to use the right words? Um Undocumented immigrants that are here, they're blaming themselves for not becoming legal immigrants from what the stories that I've read. Um, they just never really did it or didn't, you know, put their paperwork in time or whatever the reason was. They're the ones that have been here for many, many years are blaming themselves because they could have done something about it.
Well, whatever the situation
So,
is, if you literally
yeah.
didn't do anything because you just didn't, then yes, that is absolutely your fault. Sometimes, depending on how you broke American law, and if you've broken other American laws in addition to immigration law, you may be prevented, in which case you don't want to let anyone know you're there, because then, maybe you would be kicked out even under Biden, who deported more people than Trump in the first term. But I want to talk about
Or
how
you didn't
Trump,
show up to your hearing.
yeah, exactly. And that's the
You You know,
problem is they
did
bring people
did
in and
you?
then they just let them go and then they don't come back. But what's interesting is that Donald Trump did so well with Latino voters in this most recent election, even though he was very open about he was going to send millions of people home. That shows you that actually the Latinos who come to the United States legally or come here illegally and then make good on breaking that law and because there's lots of opportunity to do so. America's the most welcoming country in the world, and it's not even close. Despite all of that, a lot of people in the United States, not just white people, are like, why are we not enforcing our laws? So I'm going to share this really quickly over from Chat GPT. Donald J. Trump made significant inroads with Latino voters. Exit polls suggest he secured approximately 46% of the Latino vote. So nearly 50% of the biggest group that you are saying you're going to deport millions of. Latino men, 55% supported Trump, so more than half. And his gains were evident in regions like Florida, which has a ton of Latino immigration, both legal and illegal. South Texas, talking about Ron saying, people who live on the border have different experiences. Well, South Texas. These developments suggest a potential reshaping of American politics. Yes. You can't just claim Republicans are racist. And Republicans are now very open about we're just going to deport people who shouldn't be here. And Latinos still vote for them. No one on the left would have ever thought that that was possible. So, continue, Patrice, and then we'll get over to Stereo.
So I think people are a little ignorant on um, that Latinos uh, they they support Trump and they don't usually have a lot of sympathy for illegal immigrants here. They really don't. And you know, that's just the way it is. You know, it that's all I really have to say about that part. I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't I won't do that. Because I can. Did
But
you
can you talk
read? I
about
did.
really quickly? You've talked about how you want to shut down the border. What do you mean by that?
Oh yes. Well, I like I said on that show, um, the board. We should have done it at 9/11. Um, I don't know. I just practically thinking in my brain, if there's such a huge problem, even though illegal immigrants pay taxes and all that, there is a crime. I mean, there's crime everywhere, but anyway, the big problem with the illegal immigrants, and they're not just from Mexico, they're from
But
Colombia
there's
and
there's a huge
Venezuela
amount that's
and
from
all of that.
Central and South America. So we don't necessarily have to say
Yeah,
Mexico, but there's an enormous chunk from Mexico, and the biggest chunk is
yes.
from Central and South America.
So I would have shut those borders, completely shut them down. No entry, no I don't know what you call it when they're claiming, asylum or whatever. Just completely shut them down and make a plan. That's what I said on the other show. Make a plan, whether that takes 2 years or 5 years, and then do a test program with the borders shut, still shut, and do a test program for I don't know another year, however the engineers can figure that out on a test program and then start opening the border on contingencies. And as it goes along, is it working? Is this working? Do we need to add this? This isn't working until because nobody's been able to figure it out. Why? Because they haven't done it right. You have to
Well, it's
shut it
it's not it's
completely
not
down
just
and
about
start
figuring out
completely
what the
over.
future is, but no one enforces actual border law.
Yes.
And then the border states are left on their own to deal with it. And while Governor Greg
Ye
Abbott in Texas have been putting like razor wire in the water and stuff like that, there are democratically run cities in Texas where the mayors have been like, my party is wrong. We need to stop this. We cannot deal with hundreds of people showing up every day, every week, and they just have nowhere to go. Like because once again, the people who come in illegally, they catch them and then they let them go and tell them to come back for a court date sometime months in the future. It's just it's a joke. Whatever you think about legal and illegal immigration, the idea that people mostly just come to the border and are not turned away en masse is just mind-boggling. Like Canada doesn't do that. No country does that except the United States. You go over to Australia, which is a very diverse country. If you come to Australia via boat, you will never be allowed to come back to Australia ever again. They send you to a couple of different islands that they pay a bunch of money to, and you are never allowed to come back to Australia as a tourist. You are never allowed to come back to visit family. You are banned from the country if you come to Australia illegally via boat. They're called boat people. Look them up. It's been going on for a very long time. So the idea that America is racist or bigoted or whatever, blah, 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 is just laughable because we have the exact opposite of a system. And now even Latinos, Hispanic people who remember what it's like coming to the United States, they're saying we can't do this anymore. And you mostly have a bunch of white people on the left who are screaming racism, but the Latinos don't think it's racist. The Republicans certainly don't think it's racist. Democrats who have to run cities along the border don't think it's racist to say we have to actually have a border policy. So yes, it's two different things. It's what should we do differently? How can we change border policy? And should we even have a border policy? That seems to also be a question in the United States. But as a Democrat, someone who did not vote for Donald Trump and does not like Donald Trump, I got to say, this is one of those unfortunate broken clock works twice a day situations where the Democrats are so idiotic when it comes to border policy. Democrats who don't live along the border, I should say. And kudos to Ron for pointing out, as a liberal person who lives in Georgia, maybe he doesn't have the most updated information about what this is like, but I still think you can have an opinion. But liberal people along the border, they think really different than liberal people in DC or liberal people in Massachusetts or liberal people in Washington State. Just boggles the mind that this has gone on for so long. And because it has gone on for so long, we are seeing this huge switch of Latino voters to support Donald Trump in particular, but to the Republican Party. And Donald Trump is going to deport millions of people. And I don't think he's wrong. Now, whether or not he can do that legally and how he does it, those are other questions, because there are things that a Republican president can do or a Democratic president can do that in theory are perfectly fine and you can support it, but maybe the way they do it, okay, don't do it that way, you have to do it this way. So that's what we'll see. We'll see what the courts say, we'll see what Congress says. But the idea that there are people here illegally and we're going to send them home, the fact that that's so debatable, once again, boggles the mind when all of these things are just building on top. It's Jenga. It's going to fall apart and it's going to be even worse than it is now. You can't have this influx of millions of people who are not registered, who are afraid to talk to police, who have to receive public services, which are so minuscule in the United States. I mean, you literally have in New York City the mayor of New York City, who's like, being indicted and charged with all these crimes, but he was pointing out that New York City is full. You have people who have been homeless in New York City for years and they die on the street in the winter. But you have people who cross the border illegally, get to New York City, and they're put up in really nice hotels. I mean, this is real. This has happened recently. It's just crazy the few amount of dollars we have to help really poor people in the United States are being taken by people who are just allowed to walk into the US. We can't even take care of the
Yes.
people who are already here. It is nuts, nuts, nuts. It's News Debate. I am Lee. Stay with me, Patrice. We have a bunch of messages over on stereo. Let's get to them. We have one that's very, very hot take heavy. Let's play that maybe last because that'll veer us in a different direction, but still related. Let's try to find some messages that specifically have to deal with deportations of people, and then we'll get to this really interesting sort of left turn. So let me jump over here on stereo and see what we have. Okay, we're going to hear from, I don't have a transcript for this, but we're going to roll the dice and hear from M Spectacular, and then we're going to hear from Tattooed Turkey, who's left us many messages that once again are about a related topic, but not quite exactly what we're talking about here. So we'll try M Spectacular.
Hey Lee, it's good to see you here again, hosting News Debate. Stay spectacular. I hope all is well with you and loved ones and everybody else. Deport illegal immigrants, or I'm against deportation. So, as Americans, we have to make sure that we do what we have to do to follow along with the rules and regulations, walking the concrete, streets. So as everybody else should, do what you have to do so that you can become, a part of the United States, so that you can work without having to sneak around, because we have to pay. You should pay too. I mean, hide under anybody's walls. So yeah, do what you gotta do. Unfortunate if you don't.
Thanks for the message, M Spectacular. I'm not sure why exactly, but your volume was down really, really low. So I boosted it as much as I could, but some of that was lost out in there. Yeah, as Patrice mentioned earlier, many illegal immigrants who work illegally, because most things you do here, if you're not here legally, is illegal. They often do pay taxes. I don't know that gives them any get out of jail free card, because if they stay here long enough, they're going to pay a bunch of taxes, but they're not going to get the small amount of public services that we get, social stuff, Medicare, Medicaid. And then so they're also going to be taking the spots of homeless people and other very downtrodden Americans, because we just have this emphasis on helping Latino people who are here illegally rather than helping people of any ethnicity in the US who are supposed to be here because this is their country. It just kicks the can down the road. So I don't give any credit to anybody who pays taxes, because you're just eventually causing someone else to suffer. And it's not good for you. You should live in a country that recognizes you're supposed to be there. Whether or not it's the country you were born in, you should be in a country that recognizes your right to be there and access services and stuff. You're making it worse for everybody. But if we talk specifically about like jobs, it is true. There are certain industries, there are certain wages that's just immigrants in general, but particularly illegal immigrants are more willing to do. So that's sort of a hit you have to take. So I support mass deportations as a Democrat because I support the rule of law. And I support trying to fix the system that has been broken for so long. It just because it's broken doesn't mean we can't try. Maybe it won't work, but boy, am I willing to see what Donald Trump can do to try. And if that means that prices go up because we're not having people who are here legally doing a bunch of farm work and other things, restaurants work, okay. I mean, there is a price to pay in order to have legal workers doing legal work who are protected by unions and protected by workers' compensation and all these other things. Um, whatever prices we have now are artificial because they are supported by an industry of millions of workers who should not be here and should not have been allowed to be here this whole time. So it doesn't mean that we can't even increase immigration and seasonal labor. So people who go and pick fruit, there are these seasonal workers who are given a special visa and they're basically allowed to kind of come and go during certain amounts of time. And, as long as they have a good track record, they're allowed to come next season. That can expand. It doesn't mean that it's going to perfectly overlap with people who are being deported. But in theory, I think there is a way to kind of put a bandage on the wound, but the wound has to bleed a little bit first. So I don't care about price increases because once again, millions upon millions of people being here illegally, whether or not it affects your groceries and your fruit and vegetables today, it will affect you for the rest of your life. And so I truly believe we're trading one expense for another. But in the long term, it's making it cheaper for everybody to have everyone in the US who's supposed to be here, who's part of the system, who has access to legal benefits and social security benefits and everything else. It saves money in the long run. Then you also have the cost of just deporting people. So forget about long-term repercussions, but just how much it's going to cost to deport people. I assume it's going to cost a lot. But when would we ever use that before? Like, oh yeah, there's a lot of violent crime. How much is it going to cost to put those people in jail? Well, there were a lot of murders last year. How much is it going to cost for the police to find the people responsible? Do we ever have those conversations? These are people who broke the law. These are people who are not respecting the country that is the most welcoming country for both legal and illegal immigration in the entire world. I don't feel sorry for people on individual bases. Yes, there can be very, very sad stories that you can identify with, but I don't make it my life goal to go somewhere and illegally live there and then be upset when they're kicking me out of the country. And as someone who's traveled abroad a lot, that is a real dick move to try to pull. If you have children and stuff, that's a little bit different. But once again, if you're born in the United States, even if you're not supposed to be here, it doesn't matter. You're American because, like most other countries who don't do that, America is the most welcoming country for both legal and illegal immigration in the entire world. But just because you're here doesn't mean you get to stay. And if it costs money to send people home to enforce the law, do you know what costs money to enforce? Finding child predators, arresting drug traffickers, not talking about marijuana drug traffickers, fighting tax evasion, white collar crimes. It takes a lot of money to prosecute Donald Trump. It wasn't cheap to do that. It doesn't mean that we don't do it because it's expensive. So those are the holes that I see in those arguments. Now let's jump over here and hear from Tattooed Turkey. This is some sass. These are some hot takes over on Stereo. I'll take them one at a time. Let's hear from Tattooed Turkey on Stereo. Oh, and Patrice says, great point on seasonal workers. We could significantly enhance the visa program. Bravo. Yes. Now, once again, it's not going to be a 1-for-1. There will be pain in the middle before you put the bandage. But we have programs like that. Even with all of the millions of people who are here illegally, not a lot of them want to be farm workers on a seasonal basis. That's something specifically we have and created and maintained because it takes, I guess, a certain demographic to do that work. You're telling me we can't do more of that. It's not going to be perfect, but there are options. Yes, Patrice, I agree. Let's hear from Tattooed Turkey.
That's funny. this is stolen land built by stolen people. Who's really illegal? So, if we're going to go back to the root of who is truly illegal, then I am absolutely for deportation of Europeans in North America.
Tattoo turkey. That's some sass. All right, let's talk about this realistically. Because when I hear this from people always on the left, they never actually think it through. Maybe you have thought this through, but everyone else I've ever heard this from, they've never thought it through and what this actually would mean. So first off, if we're saying this is stolen land, let's talk about the United States, okay? So every state and every territory, so we have 50 states plus Puerto Rico and some other places, but we'll just say the 50 states. All 50 states originally were, they'd say First Nation in Canada, or they'd say Native American, or even technically the government term is still Indian. So American Indian. All of this land was owned by those people. So if we say it's stolen land, how far back do we go? Because if you go back to 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the best records we have, we could say, okay, these tribal groups, owned this area, and these tribal groups own that area. But did different tribal groups own those areas 200 years previously? And when I say own, like live in those areas, right? What about 200 years before that? What about right before 1776 when the nation was formed? So which tribal groups were at which part of the land? Who's to say at what year we decide that? That's the first thing. Then you have this whole wave of like, well, Canada too, Australia as well. There are people all over the world who are living in parts that their ethnicity are not from. You have, ethnic Chinese people living in Malaysia. So where do we stop? So of course, this is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous argument that no one ever thinks through more than 2 seconds. But if we expand past the United States, clearly it's not possible. But let's just look at the United States, where also clearly it's not possible, but it's a little easier to wrap our heads around. So do we say 1492? Do we say 1776? Because there are big differences between them. That native tribes were not overwhelmingly peaceful. They fought wars. So which native tribes was in power when? Okay, that's a question. Number 2, you say deport Europeans. Your vast majority of native peoples today in the United States have a large amount of European ancestry. There's also people who do the 23 tests and they're like, oh, I'm 7% Cherokee, something like that. So is it that you look native so you get to stay? Is it that you identify native? You grew up on some sovereign territory? Is it that you speak some native language? Is it that you're white and you're 7% Cherokee Native American? So who gets to stay? Clearly, no one thinks this through when they make this argument. And let's just go to one of a million other problems with this. So you literally want white Americans who their major ethnic ancestry is from Europe to go back to countries they don't speak the language of. They've never been there. And not just them, but their parents were. I mean, for generations upon generations. As far back in the United States history as you can go. Some people have been removed from Europe. What about Asian people who live in America, who may be fresh off the boat? Their parents came from China, their grandparents came from Japan, whatever it is. They're also out. You specifically mentioned Europeans. Is that as if America is only European and Native American? What about Black Americans who are ancestors of slavery and African Americans who immigrated to the United States from Africa? What happens to them? Oh, no one thought this through. So you know, people will criticize Donald Trump and how much money this is going to take and how crazy it's going to be to mobilize the military. But can you imagine if we did the opposite? How crazy that would be. And then finally, a country like the United States that's based on immigration because the people who were here first mostly have died from disease, and the people who did not die of disease were certainly killed by American forces. Don't get me wrong. And, you know, broken tribal agreements and all this other stuff. But if you can't undo that, and you just have to accept that even though we try to be better every day, that is our history. Does that mean that we can never say no to a single immigrant who wants to come to the United States? Because our country is based on immigration, as if other countries are not, as if Canada is not, as if Australia is not, as if New Zealand is not. Even Brazil has a ton of immigration over the course of its history. Because America is an immigrant country, it always has to be. We can't have any system of checks and balances on that. We can't have any rules, and we just have to have an open door policy. Once again, if you think through well, it's all stolen land. Why don't we send the Europeans home? How little thoughts do people who say this actually give to those consequences? And of course, they don't actually mean that, because if they did, they would be insane. So, what do you mean when you give that message? Are you just trying to be contrary, which, by the way, is fine? I love the sass. I love the sass. But, like, what does this actually add to the conversation? What does this actually try to interject into people's minds? White guilt? Colonialization history? What are we trying to do when we say this? Because it's not give proactive solutions. It's certainly not that. So what are people trying to do when they say that? It's a genuine question on my end. It's News Debate I Am Wade. Reggie has joined us back here on the show. Reggie, I'm going to invite you to speak if you'd like to throw in on this or another topic. I know that when you join, you're usually at work, so it's hard for you to jump in. So if you're able to jump in now, I would love to hear. You can either talk about our current topic of how Joe Biden is officially racist. Wait, no, that wouldn't happen. Being anti-immigration is no longer automatically something that makes you racist. That's a better way to put it. Democrats can't be racist. They're the anti-racism party. Joe Biden has deported more people than Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is going to deport a lot more people. So we're basically talking about that. Specifically right now, we're talking about the idea that, well, America's stolen land anyways. So what does that even mean? What value do we get from that line of thinking? So Reggie, if you want to throw in over on Twitter Spaces, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll go back to stereo and hear from more people.
America was built on racism. Again, maybe I'll repeat my last message. Stolen land, built by stolen people. And these people are still suffering today. We are still suffering today because of the systems in this country that were enforced on us by illegal immigrants. Tell me again how America is not born and bled into racism. Tell me again how it is not the very fabric that stitches all of this bullshit together. It's that unified hate that goes across different ethnicities, which is what Latinidad is. It is an ethnicity, not a race. I have a lot that I'd like to say, but I'll keep it short.
I can tell you do, and I'm more than welcome to Rather, I'm more than open to hear it from you. I just wish it would make more sense. So what country that is not majority population and ethnicity and race, we're not going to discuss that because you go from country to country, they view them differently. Some sort of genetic way you look. Okay, that's what we're talking about, ethnicity and race. I'm not going to have that discussion right now because it'll never end. But give me a country that is not the majority of an ethnicity that is viewed as from that part of the country. So if you go back far enough, that doesn't necessarily be that, because you have movements of people that we have tracked through human history that we can prove. But if you go somewhere, and generally today it's okay for people who look that way to say that this is their land. That's what I'm talking about. So people in Africa who are black, clearly gets more convoluted and more tricky than that. But if you're black in Africa, it's different than being white in Africa, right? So give me a nation that's a part of the world that's more than half. Sorry, give me a nation somewhere in the part of the world that is, yes, more than half of the ethnicity that should be there, that has a ton of immigration. I'll wait, because you'll have to look them up. It's not that common. Places where people identify as we are from this land, and there's a whole bunch of them in that country, so it's mono, it's one culture sort of a situation. They don't let people in. Now you have places like the United States where it's majority white still, but it won't be in the future. Majority white, and we are not from this area of the world. Yet America is the most welcoming, open society on the planet. Canada is also open and welcoming. Australia is also open and welcoming, not like the United States. The UK, open and welcoming, not like the United States. So tell me a country where the majority of people, like the United States, are not from that area within the past 500 years. That's not based on racism. You want to talk to some Native people in Canada and you think they won't say the same thing. You want to talk to some Aboriginal people in Australia and you don't think they won't say the same thing. There's nothing specific you have just said that talks about the United States. And in fact, the United States is better than many of these other countries. Australia does not have formal treaties with Aboriginal people. They do not have sovereign territory, basically their own separate countries like we do in the United States for native lands. There's nothing like that in Australia. So we're better than they are. Is it perfect? No one's saying that. No country is perfect. Once again, the places where the majority of people identify with an ethnicity that should be in that area of the world, super racist. You're telling me Asia is not super racist? Look at the ethnic cleansing, the genocide that's taking place in Africa based on minuscule differences between quote unquote ethnicities. America is the most welcoming country in the world. So if we play your game and we say, well, white people shouldn't be here, well, black people shouldn't be here, your Asians shouldn't be here. That even covers people of First Nation ancestry from Canada who immigrated to the United States. Their native people weren't here. So we get everybody out. I believe you identified as a native person. What percentage of your ethnicity, of your DNA is native? What's the level? Half? 25%? 75%? Does you have to identify as native? You had to grow up on some sort of sovereign territory in the United States? There's no definition. So why even talk about this? So we clear out Australia? We clear out Canada? We clear out the United States? Of course not. So what's the point of bringing this up? This is obvious history. You talking about how racist America is today is not obvious history, but historically, yes, no arguments. That's how it was. We can't change that. But what is the point of bringing that up now? if we're having actual concrete discussions about what to do with immigration. All of the horrible things that happen to Native peoples in the United States does not matter when we're talking about 2024 and what do we do with the tens of millions of people who are here in the United States illegally, who are not indigenous. What's the value here? I fail to see the value. So Tattooed Turkey, by the way, great name. Great name. If you have some way to tie in these issues you're bringing up to today and say that because of all of these things that I'm saying, we should therefore do this with our immigration policy, I would love to hear it. My guess is the only thing you can say is that because of all of these things, we should just not have an immigration policy and we should just let everybody in. I disagree with that. That destroys the United States, but at least that makes sense. If you argue, well, all of these European settlers were here illegally, and all these other people who came thereafter were legal, Native people don't run the country. Therefore, people who even follow our immigration policy, it's not legal because it's not run by Native councils. Therefore, we should have no immigration policy, and anyone who wants to come can come. If you said that, I would disagree with you, and I would say that's really dangerous. But at least I would say that makes sense. My guess is you're not going to say that. Prove me wrong. Feel free to. I love the sass. My guess is you're not going to say that. But that's the only thing I can imagine. Please give me another one. If I lack imagination, that's the only thing I can imagine you would say that would have anything to do with what you're talking about now. Otherwise, it's useless. What's the value? I'm interested in finding value in these comments. They're certainly sassy. I love the sass, but give me the value. Snooze a bit, Emily. Reggie has tweeted something that I will not read.
And lead Newz, why are they afraid to speak to the police? Why are they afraid to do things the legal way? And why are we occupying their countries so that they have to flee them? I need you to look deeper into the root, because everything that you've been talking about is very surface level. And the talking points are not really based in fact. It's hard to get fact when everything is being manipulated for an agenda that is very racist in nature.
So once again, we'll just have to disagree on some of these facts that you throw out and your disagreement with facts that I throw out. No one is occupying Mexico. No one is occupying Guatemala or Honduras. Have we meddled with Central American affairs, Central and South American affairs? Oh, yes, we have. Oh, yes, we have. And my apologies. I was muted that whole time, so I'm a big dummy. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. What I was saying, Tattooed Turkey, great name. You and I are just going to have to disagree on certain things because you don't like my facts and I don't like yours. But the fact of the matter is, you used occupation, occupy, that terminology. No one's occupying Mexico. No one's occupying Guatemala, Honduras, Venezuela. Have we meddled with Central and South? Have no arguments because I'm trying to have factual information on the show. But when you say occupy, I don't know what you're talking about. The only occupation you could argue would be that America is being occupied, but we're not talking about illegal immigrants being people who are of native descent in the United States. We're talking about people who are of, a lot of the times, native descent from other parts of Central and South America, but not from the U.S. It's different. So once again, I don't see any value in bringing that up because it's not true, but even if it was, we're not talking about previous, we're talking about today. Secondly, my point that you made, this was an old message, so I'll give you a benefit of the doubt on that. When I said that people who are living here in the United States are afraid to talk to the police, it's because they broke the law. If I was living in Japan illegally, I would be afraid to talk to the police too. That has nothing to do with racism. Is there racism in the police department? Okay, that's a different discussion. But what I'm talking about and what you specifically mentioned of, oh yeah, people being afraid to talk to police because they broke the law. People who break the law are put in jail by the police. So if you break the law, you don't want to talk to the police. Pretty logical, right? So you and I will just have to disagree on racism in the United States and stuff like that. But if we're just talking about facts in general, I think the facts disagree with you as well. I appreciate the comments. I just wish there was more substance there. And we'll play your final comment.
I would have still been property in 1776. So the arguments of that are comical. You lost me when you said Native Indian. This isn't India. Those are indigenous people. Those indigenous people were migrating all over the world. Melanated indigenous people have been migrating all over the world before colonization. I hope you have a good day, though.
I hope you have a good day too. No hard feelings. I loved having you on the show. But it's always about race for you, melanated people. So not white people, as if white people did not go around the world. Christ. Reggie made a comment earlier that I'm not going to repeat because it's a bit feisty. But what he's talking about was just sort of proven correct by that voice message that we just heard. So clearly this person just thinks about white people and everyone else that's not white and kind of pits them against each other. Just because for hundreds or thousands of years people were immigrating all over the world has no bearing on the United States. In 1492, which that's not where Columbus hit, but in 1776 when we declared ourselves as a nation. And one of the reasons we declared ourselves as a nation was because we wanted to have different relationships with Native American tribes than the British did. Sometimes they were better with Native Americans than we were. And final point, we had some disagreement in that message over terms. I explained my terms. You don't explain yours. So I'm going to side with mine because I give reasons. You just say your terms and say they're better. Indian is a correct term for the American government. We still have institutions that have the word Indian in them. It's not a dirty word. We have government institutions with the term Indian. It is a correct word to use. We can also say Native American. That's a term that a lot of people use in everyday conversation. You can also say indigenous. But indigenous is not particularly talking about the United States. Indigenous covers people all over the world. It's just a general descriptor for people who are from an area of the world who are often very much screwed over. If you say First Nation, it means Indigenous Canadian, but we're talking about Canada. If you say Aboriginal, most of the time people think of Australia. So I explain my terms. You just get upset and use other terms to put me down. I'm a little confused by that. I have not been like really favorable to what you've said on the show, but I've not gone like over the top and trying to put you down. And I feel like I'm getting that from your end, and I'm just a little confused to why that's happening. Other than that's what I hear a lot from people on the left is they say decolonize melanated people. Like such a ridiculous term like that, as if white people have always been white, as if Native American people always looked a certain way, as if there's some sort of distinction between the two. When you go back hundreds of years of people traversing the seas and going through land bridges and mountains and stuff like that, as if there's some sort of, well, there's the white human beings and then there's the melanin human beings. It's just tribalism, and what I hear is just words that are designed to hurt other people, and that's unfortunate. I don't think what you're saying has much value for the reasons I've pointed out, but I've not tried to put you down specifically, and you appear to be trying to put me down, and that's just what I get all the time from my fellow lefties when I say what I think are reasonable things about the border. You know, just like when we talk about Israel and we talk about Gaza, and someone tries telling me, "Well, it was all Jewish land, thousands of years ago." I say, "What? Excuse me, what did you just say?" Well, before all, you mean like thousands of years ago that was all Jewish land, and that should have some bearing on Israel killing women and children in Gaza today? I don't know what to tell you. Reggie tweets over on Twitter, as far as words go, it's called illegal immigration for a reason. There's a process for a reason. Yes. You can't say illegal immigrant anymore because that's a dirty word. You have to say migrant, even though migrants means you come and you go. Birds that migrates go one place and then they go another based upon the weather. People who come to the United States and stay here for years upon end are not migrants. Migrants could describe seasonal workers that do farm work. They come, they work, they go back. They come, they work, they go back. That's not who's getting deported. Migrants are not getting deported. Immigrants are getting deported, specifically people who broke our laws and are illegal immigrants. Or you could say undocumented if that makes you feel better, but they're undocumented because they broke the law. And as a Democrat, I got to say, Trump, boy, is it refreshing to have somebody who says, well, I'm going to do something about it. And boy, is it refreshing that Joe Biden, it's just come out, has deported more people in his 4 years than Trump did, which means that deportations are not illegal anymore. I'm sorry, deportations are not racist anymore. It's okay. Joe Biden did it. It has to be okay because he's a Democrat. It's News Debate. I am Lee. Want to hear more from you guys? Leave me some voice messages, request to speak over on Twitter Spaces. Let's hear from the electrician over on Stereo. How you doing, man?
Hey, it's interesting you're talking about this. I was working in Indianola, Iowa, where the high school mascot, or the high school, it shouldn't say mascot, but the high school name is the Indianola Indians. And approximately 3 years ago, there was a deal on the news where this Caucasian family didn't like the name. They didn't feel right wearing the name Indians on their jersey, and they tried to get it changed. They got shot down 3 years in a row, I believe, that they tried to petition to get it changed, which I think is great. Because how do you live in Indianola and play for the Indians and not like the name? They're going to change the name of the water tower too? Lee News Debate. Isn't it interesting how all these small towns, how they name themselves after the water tower? Merry Christmas.
Or wouldn't it be small towns put their name on the water tower? It's not like they're like on horseback. We're gonna go find some new land. Oh, hey, is that a water tower? It says Pleasantville. I guess we're Pleasantville now. No, it's they put their name on the water tower. That's what you mean, right? I gotta say, you can't get more nail on the head than Indianola. That's what he said, right? Indianola, Iowa, and the high school mascot is the Indian. They really lacked imagination in that town. I'm trying to find this story. So the most updated I'm seeing is from this year, but I'm still not seeing many updates after that. So I'm wondering if I need to try some new search terms. Yeah, Patrice tweets every town in Texas has their name on the water tower. Yeah, I think that's normal. I think he just misspoke. You don't name yourself after the water tower. You put your name on the water tower. But I got to tell you, I've never heard of a town called Indianola that also is like literally. It's like we're the Pleasantville Pleasants. Indianola Indians. Wow. Okay. Nothing against it. I'm sure they're a very great school district, but I've never. Trying to find like a local newspaper or something that might have some information on this. Indianola, Iowa. We'll have to talk to Bjorn. He always talks about Iowa. Oh, this might be it. What's the date on this? Crap, does it have a date? How does a newspaper not have a date? Okay, whatever the case, this is the Des Moines Register, which I've heard of before. Seems legit. Make this a little bigger so we can read it. Here we go. Okay, from the Des Moines Register.com. I'm sharing this over on twitch.tv/NEWZ debate. And we're also on rumble.com/user/NEWZ debate. 3 new members of the Indianola, that's what he said, right? Indianola School Board lean toward keeping the district's team name, the Indians, and school logo, which is a dream catcher, according to unofficial results. These people were elected to the Indianola School Board. The board members did not run for re-election, so these were new people. One is a doctor and said he's firmly in favor of keeping the Indianola Indians sports mascot and the district's Dreamcatcher logo. Dreamcatcher is way better than like some of the other ones out there. That doesn't seem unreasonable. He also said he's in support of placing the topic on the board's agenda for discussions with the community. One member who's a member of the Iowa National Guard said he supports it. The school board president said before the election that the earliest the topic of changing the sports team mascot and district logo could be placed on the board's agenda would be early next year. So it sounds like it's an ongoing thing that they're talking about. But I mean, this is the problem. This is once again what I was talking about with Tattooed Turkey Leg, great name, over on Stereo, is that a lot of this time it's just anti-white sentiment. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, unfortunately, reverse racism is a thing. It's ridiculous that it's a thing, but it's a thing because lefties are ridiculous. We literally have Notre Dame. Their mascot is a leprechaun. And they're called the Fighting Irish. And no one is ever talking about how that's offensive because people are not idiots. But if you have the Redskins, which, okay, among offensive mascots, that's probably near the top. You have the Seminoles. You have the Cleveland Indians that I believe they're changing their name. You have the Kansas City Chiefs. Basically, once you get rid of the most offensive ones on that list and people are still upset, it just turns into you cannot have native mascots. And that is special treatment. Everyone should be against special treatment. We should all be the same. And if we can't have that, then we can't have Irish mascots. I've seen schools that are like the Fighting Dutchman or something like that. Can't do that. Can't have the Vikings. Oh, the NFL, the Vikings. Sorry, that's racist. But it's never any of that. It's always native mascots. And this town in Iowa, its name literally has Indian in it. It's called Indianola, and they're called the Indians, and their mascot is not some guy with a big red face. It's a dream catcher, which is a thing you can buy and sell. It's not copyrighted. I could sell dream catchers if I so chose, versus literally the Fighting Irish or the Vikings. It's like, do you remember when The Simpsons many years ago, there was this whole problem with Apu and how Apu was racist. And even though he was a esteemed member of the community that everybody cared about, and he ran a store that everyone went to, but it was racist. And from what I understand, they got rid of Apu, and he just hasn't been on the show since. I don't watch The Simpsons anymore because it's just weird now. Yet there's literally a character on The Simpsons called Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel. He is a caricature of poor white people. He perpetuates a very negative stereotype of poor white people that has some truth to it, like all stereotypes. And then Apu, who has a job, who's respected, who is friends with everyone in town, somehow that's inappropriate. That's the reverse racism of America. It's unfortunate. I don't want it to be true, but it is. And it's the same thing when you have to get rid of your Indian mascots, but we have the Vikings, we have the Dutchmen, we have the Fighting Irish. Like, go around and find things everywhere. You'll find stuff. But for some reason, we really have to be sensitive around Native people. I get there's history, but isn't the goal of the United States not that people are treated differently based on who screwed over your people in the past, but everyone's treated the same? Back in the day during civil rights, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the fight so that everyone was the same rather than some people were special and some people weren't? It's crazy how if you believe people on the left now, my side of the part, my side, the Democrat, they say that, oh, white people have special privilege and we need to stop that. Okay. I don't necessarily agree in every way, but I can get behind that. Oh, and in order to show that special privilege and special rights are wrong, we want to shift that privilege and those special rights to people of color. Huh. Wait. Special rights are wrong. Yes, they're very wrong. They're so wrong. Totally wrong. Huh. So you want to just get rid of special rights. You want to of color because special rights are wrong. Exactly. End scene. It's News Debate. I'm late. We're going to hear from the electrician, and I'm going to call you Huck, Phuck. I know what you want me to say. I'm going to call you Huck. So let's hear from the electrician, then we'll hear from Huck and the electrician. Sorry, had an audio issue on my end. Let me correct that. One second here. Let's try that message again.
So you may find an article on KCCI, which is a local news station, or the Des Moines Register, but I think it's more of a KCCI story that broke at one point about that. Probably when they had some downtime, they covered that. And what's interesting is I know the husband of the wife that doesn't like the name Indians. And my wife grew up with him, and her family was friends with their family. But yeah, Indianola Indians. Des Moines Register is most of our, and I guess Donald Trump's suing the Des Moines Register because they put false poll numbers out, because Des Moines Register is more Democratic. But anyway, that was one of the articles that came out recently, is that he's suing the Des Moines Register.
Yeah, you might have heard it, electrician, but I did read from the Des Moines Register. Yeah, actually, I did see that Donald Trump is suing the Des Moines Register for some poll that they put out right before the election. I saw that in national news coverage. So yeah, I did see that. That appears to be the case. Let's go hear from Huck. Huck over on stereo. Let's not hear from Huck over on stereo. Although, that's a pretty fun cat song. We're going to hear now from Miss Smitty over on stereo. Great to have you. Let's hear what she has to say.
Can you expand on how you feel like the left wants to shift white privilege to non-white people? Because as someone who is also on the left, this is kind of news to me. So I just would be interested in knowing like how you come to that conclusion.
Great to hear from you, Miss Smitty. You've never encountered that on the left? If so, I want to be you. I want to live your life. I encounter that all the time. People tell me on this show. People tell me in real life. I see it on Twitter. Affirmative action. Affirmative action literally rewards people for college entrance based on the color of their skin. So you can be rich and black and get preference over a poor white person or a poor Asian person, a poor Indian from India person. I mean, that's the beginning of it. And then you see DEI in universities, you see it in the government, you see it at private companies, but actually they're starting to get rid of it. And I support that. I supported the Supreme Court when they said affirmative action is illegal. It's one of those things, if I was talking to myself, like that would be enough. And I'd be like, oh, yes, I understand what you mean, Lee. Lee, aren't you a good fellow to host the show? Great job. Thank you, self. I've been experiencing that for the past decade or longer. The fact that you have to recognize that you have white privilege. I did not grow up in a good family. I did not grow up in a safe family. I did not grow up in a family that generally supported me. And when you go abroad as a white American, and because you're abroad, people think that, you've reached a certain amount of success and you have a certain amount of money, and maybe that's mostly true. They just assumed that things were so much better for you because of the color of your skin. And I'm just like, excuse me? So maybe I'm not doing a good job of explaining this, but as a left person, I hear this every day. That the goal of ending racism is not to end racism. When I was young, I'm not 50. When I was young, the goal of ending racism was to end racism. But now the goal to end racism is to change positions. So we need to have more black people in positions of power than the percentage of black people, which is around 12% in the United States, would indicate. We need to have less white people in power, even though white people are the majority in America. At least now, for some time, they will be. That's not what ending racism used to mean before I was born. From what I understand historically, ending racism just meant people were the same. Now it means switching it around. And you're not the same, because it seems more about revenge than about actual ending of racism. Don't get me wrong. All things being considered, anyone in the US who says they'd rather grow up black or Latino or something, native, they're full of shit. Specifically, growing up as Asian in the United States, I don't think there's a lot of discrimination, because Asians do very well in the United States. Same thing with Indian from India. They do very well in the United States. The demographics of people like Latinos who come into the United States oftentimes illegally, and they don't have a lot of things going for them. They often do a lot of manual labor. There's a lot of problems with outreach in those communities. There's issues with language and all these other things. Yeah, I wouldn't choose to be part of that community. But we've talked about it on the show. African immigrants from Africa do much better in the United States than Black Americans who were born and raised here. There are differences in culture. Barack Obama has talked about that. Don't listen to me. Look what Barack Obama says about Black fathers. So did I win the lottery by just looking at me? I'm a white guy. Yes, I did. Is that the only way to win the lottery? No, it's not. But it could have been worse. But at the same time, if I have kids, if I'm in charge of other people's kids, my idea of ending racism is not to switch the power dynamics. It's to remove the power dynamics. It's News Debate. I'm on. Kansas City. Yeah. Kansas City 27-19. Patrice reports she won $10. Yeah. I'm taking that win too. Frankie J chose Texas, chose the Texans. And there was some debate because we weren't sure if Mahomes was going to play, but he played. And I said, I'm taking KC. And oh no, Frankie J still took the Texans, and 0-1 thus far on his picks. He also picked Ravens to beat the Steelers, and I think that's a good pick. I would take the Ravens to beat the Steelers as well. That's pretty solid right there. That was earlier on in the show. We've been going almost 3 hours, so you can check out all my replays on twitch.tv/NEWZdebate and rumble.com/user/NEWZdebate. Actually, you can catch my replays for about 7 days on Twitch, and the rest of my replays are on Rumble. At least the last of my replays for the last couple of months, because my YouTube account that I had, 3 years or longer, I was banned from YouTube for discussing the election. So, yep. Let's jump back over to stereo. We'll hear from the electrician, and we'll hear from Miss Smitty again. Let's hear from the electrician.
Yeah, I'm from Sioux City, Iowa. And in Sioux City, the college in the area I'm from, I don't live there now, but the college is called the Morningside Maroons. Well, it used to be called the Morningside Chiefs my whole life until around mid to late 90s. Somebody had an issue with it, and they changed it, the Morningside Chiefs. Then you have a lot of money, and you're called the Kansas City Chiefs, and your stadium is called Arrowhead Stadium. It's okay. It's interesting. But Sioux City, obviously, I know a lot of Indians in Sioux City, so people think I'm Indian, but I'm just Caucasian. And some people would even argue with me and say, if you look back in your history, I guarantee you got some Native American. And I'm like, no, not at all. I've already looked back at my history. There's none. But there's a side of my family that we almost do have.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there, electrician, but let's hope I remember all of it to discuss. I can understand the Redskins. That one, if there was one we were going to get rid of, that would be at the top of my list. The Cleveland Indians, not at the top of my list. That's no different than the Fighting Irish or the Vikings. I don't think the logo is particularly offensive, but I guess that's a subjective thing. Just the name, though, no, it's the exact same thing. So it's funny that you said the Morningside Chiefs, when the Chiefs is still an okay term. They haven't lost that battle yet, and I don't think they will as long as the Chiefs are good. If they were a bad team, the way the Redskins were, maybe it'd be a little bit different. And then finally, this happens all the time. I have so many friends. Hey, Leah, took 23andMe, blah, blah. 7% Native American. I don't encourage people to take these tests because I believe by taking the test, the company gets to use your DNA. That's the trade. And call me crazy. That just seems weird. I'm not into that. But if you're not afraid of those tests the way I am, and I think it's probably an illogical fear if you get down to it, you might be surprised what you'd find in your family history. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Let's jump back to stereo, and we're going to hear from Miss Smitty.
I mean, in 2023, the Supreme Court effectively banned affirmative action in college admissions. So do you have other examples beyond the college admissions? Did I miss those?
Well, so even with affirmative action, what they did was they said that you cannot use affirmative action as a deciding process to get into college, but you can still write about in your college essay the fact that you're black, the fact that you're not white, the fact that you're a person of color. So they didn't get rid of it. They really diluted it and made it less of a factor, but it's still a factor. Gosh, I mean, I feel like I gave you some before. Like if you look at well, the NFL, for instance, the Vikings, the Fighting Irish, I mentioned that previously. If you look at Halloween costumes, just dressing up like someone from your favorite Disney film, even if it's without face paint, just dressing up like someone who's not the race that you are is offensive. And if you use face paint, Jesus Christ, you're going to be dead and buried. Whereas, I mean, comedians to this day on SNL, and if you watch Key and Peele and stuff on Comedy Central, whatever, is that Comedy Central now? Whatever, I've only seen them on YouTube, whatever network they're on. I mean, a black person can literally wear white paint, and a white person could not do the other. Jimmy Fallon had to apologize because one time on Saturday Night Live years ago, when it was perfectly fine, he wore makeup and pretended to be Chris Rock because he does a good Chris Rock impression. Chris Rock, who just hosted Saturday Night Live, I didn't see it. If he wore makeup and pretended to be someone else, no one would care. Dave Chappelle did it. Dave Chappelle is a magician when it comes to comedy. He's amazing, and he did that stuff all the time. I mean, that's a clear reverse racism. But I'm really, Miss Smitty, you're keeping me honest, but I'm as someone who describes yourself as liberal, the fact that you haven't run into this, I run into this all the time. I am constantly being told that my accomplishments are because I was white. Depending on who I talk to on a daily basis, depending on who I read on Twitter on a daily basis. It's crazy. It's crazy. Now, when it comes to actual legislation, I would say affirmative action, which you're right, has been really muted, not disappeared, but really, really depowered. DEI, equity offices, those sorts of things. I mean, it's just so funny, like the idea that having more diverse people in the workforce, and not diverse with culture, not diverse with political mindset, but just the color of their skin, as if that somehow makes your office better. Try telling that to Japan or South Korea or China, as if we don't have successful companies that come out of Scandinavia where everybody is white. Like, just somehow, if you have a factory with people with different skin color, somehow that's a better situation. I'd like to see data that actually shows that. We just assume that is true. We drink the Kool-Aid on the left, those sorts of things. I'm not against hiring people who look different. but specifically hiring someone to meet a quota because we are told without question that having people who just look different, not from different areas of the world, not from different areas of the country, they could have grown up right next to each other, but because they look different, it's important to have them on your workforce. But I feel like I've answered the question. Whether or not your request is legitimate, perhaps I am over exaggerating this. I don't think I am, but those are the answers that I can provide. Let's jump back over to stereo, and we'll hear from Old World Order.
Now, what a better question is, why do we have illegal immigrants when we have borders and we have a government and we have a border force, we have an army and a navy whose job is to, guess what? Protect our borders. That's a real question there. Why do we have an influx of thousands, if not millions, of illegal immigrants, and they're only coming to two places, Europe and America? That's it. They don't run into China. They're not running to Japan. They're not running to Indonesia. They're not running to Canada. Nope. It's mainly America, mainly Europe and Britain. That is pretty much it. So I ever thought maybe, possibly, just possibly, this is all organized? Just throwing it out there. What do you guys think about illegal immigration being organized by the government for horrible reasons?
Well, finally, we get into some conspiracy stuff. I don't believe that holds up at all. The reason immigrants are not heading to China is because China has a government and a military that enforces its laws. The reason people are not heading to Japan, like you just mentioned, is because, well, it's several islands. You can't just get there. It's a lot harder to get to Japan. But once again, they enforce their immigration laws. Australia, same thing. It's an island. It's hard to get to. And if you go there illegally, they kick you out and you can never come back. We have nothing close to that in the United States. What I think you are incorrectly identifying are places that are open to immigration. And Canada is on that list. I believe you said it wasn't. But Canada's the same thing. Canada, talk about privilege. Canada is the most privileged country in the world. It's not even an island like Australia or New Zealand or the islands of Japan. It's a land country that has a huge land border with the most important locked up country in the United States when it comes to some things. Immigration is not one of them. But if you get to the United States, why would you go all the way north to go to Canada when they actually enforce their border much more than we do? Are there Latinos in Canada? Yes, but they went there legally. Canada does not have anything close to the illegal immigration that we have in the United States, despite being an enormous country with so much room. There are more people in California than Canada, and yet they don't let them in. That's why you know America is open, because Canada has more open space and they don't let people in. The UK is very pro-immigrants, and maybe you would argue they're less like that because of the EU Brexit thing, but still much more open than other countries. But to imagine there's some sort of like giant power pushing people around, I've seen no evidence of that. One thing that has been happening is that Finland was having people show up at its border with Russia, and they were not from that area. They clearly had come from somewhere else, and they were showing up with like bicycles and things like that. So the guess is that Russia is basically fighting a Cold War with Finland and sending a bunch of immigrants their way, but really they're people who maybe do want to go somewhere, but the reason they're going to Finland is because Russia's helping them get there. So what has Finland done? Finland has built an enormous wall. They're building a fence over like 2/3 of the country. We talked about it previously on another show, read a lot of stuff about it. So the idea that walls don't work, nonsense. Every other country has them that wants to protect its border. The idea that America is racist, nonsense. Because if we're talking about racist, you have to, it's not objective. You have to compare it to something. We're the most open society in the world. Go live in Canada. I've talked to plenty of Canadians. Canada has strict immigration, and they're privileged because you have to fly to get into Canada. No one is crossing into Canada by foot. And when they are, they get caught. That's what happens in America. That's the shit that is the southern border. Japan doesn't have to deal with that. Australia doesn't have to deal with that. New Zealand doesn't have to deal with that. China doesn't have to deal with that because they have a totalitarian communist government that just fucks people up if you try to get in. We don't do that. So to get back to your original question, New World Order, we have this huge military. Why don't we do anything? Because we can't. Texas tries to block people from coming in, and they get told by the Supreme Court to stop. Our military doesn't cover the border. Any military stuff we have on the border is used in very small, specific instances, oftentimes associated with emergencies. Same thing for the National Guard. We'll send the National Guard to the Middle East, to Iraq, but we won't send them to our southern border most of the time. All right, it's News Debate. I'm Lee. We might start wrapping things up. We've gone 3 hours. That's a solid amount for any show. Would love to hear from anyone else. If you have anything you want to add before the show's over, leave a message on stereo, request to speak over on Twitter Spaces. Once again, you can call and text the show on an actual number, 323-250-0867. All right, I think that's going to do it. Big thanks to everybody who joined today's show. The people I can remember, Ron, Frankie J, Patrice, Reggie. I'll look over here on stereo. Old World Order, Miss Smitty, the electrician. Tattooed Turkey. M Spectacular. And everybody else I might be forgetting. Really appreciate it. If you like the show, feel free to throw me a few bucks every month. Patreon.com/NEWZ debate. If you're a Patreon supporter, you're an automatic co-host. It usually works best over on Twitter Spaces. And I appreciate all the people who do support me every month, including Apostate Nate, Frankie J, Better Vibes, Lola, Shannon, Mojo, Sneaky Elbow, Ron, Natasha, Nick, MC Funk, Bjorn, Glenn, and Patricia. And I will post on Twitter and my Discord server when I schedule my next show. We'll probably do a show tomorrow, maybe around the same time. And twitter.com/NEWZ debate, and also bit.ly/NEWZ debate. You can just click on my Discord server. Take care, everybody. Until next time, have a good rest of your day. And check out the Steelers and the Ravens. I'm taking the Ravens. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.